Hello everyone, welcome to the Coopersmith Career Consulting crash course on the Introduction to Marketing course. We are going to be doing is we're going to be going through the slides, the PowerPoint slides that you also have access to, and I'm going to try to be illustrating certain points to make it a little bit easier for you to go over on your own rather than just having to rely on the marketing course. Introduction to Marketing, which is BUS 102 in our naming convention, is really the only thing you're going to need to do is take the final exam. The final exam will be administered to you at the proctoring venue of the way you arrange it with the person that you're dealing with, the representative that you're dealing with. And the exam is primarily going to be a series of short essays, kind of open-ended questions. The sort of thing where we're not just looking for an answer, but we're also looking for you to do a little bit of thinking. We might give you a hypothetical and ask for what you think would be the best idea, or give you a little bit of a scenario and ask you to explain what the problem with the manager's thinking is, or the marketer's thinking is. And that's really what the marketing course is about. It's about fundamental principles, problems, and practices of marketing, including pricing, products to be produced, materials to be produced, things like that. There are, of course, a series of course objectives. You can look at these at your leisure. It's not critical that we go on as far as that's concerned. There is a textbook that this is based on, although this crash course is designed to allow you to be able to prepare for the final exam. There's also, in the PowerPoints, there's a little, if you want to print this out, rather than printing them out one page at a time, there's a little tutorial explaining to you how to go about printing 4 on a page. We don't have to worry about that in this crash course. You can just follow the directions on this slide. And I, of course, do definitely recommend that everybody print this out. Print out or at least, if you're not going to print it out, at least read it on the computer, because that's very important to be able to do well on the final exam. In addition to listening to this crash course, you're also definitely going to want to read the PowerPoint study guide. If you do those two things, I think you should be very well prepared for the final exam. And we're going to start the course by looking at an overview of what marketing is. Marketing, the title of the chapter, as you can see, is creating and capturing customer value. Not just creating and capturing the customer, him or herself, but also creating value out of that customer. Marketing means many different things. It means managing profitable customer relationships. Without customer relationships, marketing is irrelevant, because that's really the whole purpose of marketing, is to establish and keep the customers. Also, the customer relationships have to be profitable. If you have a relationship that you're not making any money out of, well then your marketing is kind of irrelevant, because the company isn't going to do well on those relationships. Marketing is also the process by which companies create value for consumers and build strong customer relationships. For example, marketing doesn't stop once you've made the sale. Once you've made the sale, well, now it comes to keeping the customer satisfied so that the customer should come back again. I remember when I bought a car a few years ago at a dealership, after we did the sale and we were doing the paperwork, the salesperson tells me, "This is not the end of our relationship, this is the beginning of our relationship." And what he meant is that he hoped that I would come back to the dealership to get oil changes and servicing, and that I would come back to get more cars in the future, etc., etc., etc. It didn't work out that way, but the point is that was a very good marketing statement. That was an excellent marketing statement, because what he was trying to implant in me, that whatever my car needs in the future, I could always come back to him, and he'd be happy to give me all the same kind of stuff that he just gave me in the sale, that I obviously was satisfied enough to make the purchase. So the goals of marketing include attracting new customers by promising superior value, not necessarily superior price, although that's certainly an element of it, but also promising better value for the price over whatever other competitors there are out there. Sometimes there are industries in which you're the only giver of services. For example, if you're the local utility and you give electricity, nobody has a choice. They're either going to take it from you or they're not going to have lights. In that case, you don't really have to do a lot of marketing, because there's no competition. On the other hand, if you're dealing with something like buying a car or buying a computer or something like that, there is a tremendous amount of competition. You have to show your customer superior value, either by showing better price or by showing better return on that price. And you also want to grow your customer base by delivering satisfaction. Growing your customer base includes maintaining previous customers that will come back to you, and it also means establishing a good reputation in the industry. If you do that, well then, fantastic. Other people will listen to the people who came to you and were satisfied, and they'll come back to you again. The old view of marketing, in other words, the old view in this case just means the way people used to look at the marketing objective was to simply make the sale. Well, making the sale is certainly one element, but the modern view of marketing is to not only make the sale, but also satisfy the needs of the customer. Making a sale gets you one sale. Satisfying the needs of the customer can get you many future sales. And that brings us to the concept of marketing myopia. Focusing only on that first thing, making a sale, could lead to this phenomenon. Myopia means short-sightedness. So short-sightedness from a marketing perspective occurs when the seller pays more attention to the products rather than the experience or benefits that are produced by the products. When you're selling something, you can't just look at what the product offers. What you need to look at is what the product offers with regard to the customer, with regard to the person that you're dealing with. If you offer a fantastic product, but this customer doesn't happen to need it, you could offer the great sunroof in this new car that you're selling, but if the customer doesn't want a sunroof, that's really going to be irrelevant. When it comes to marketing, you need to offer all the great products you have and tell the customers about the great products, but what you really need to do is tell the customer about the specific products or the specific elements of the products that the buyer needs. Without that, marketing is kind of useless. And one certain element of marketing, aside from getting more people to want the product, you also want to increase your market percentage, the share of customers. Share of customers means the percentage of customers in a market. An example over here, if Best Buy sells electronics to 55% of all customers in a place called Spring Valley, and they want to increase their share to 65%, that means they want to increase the share of customers of all the people that buy this particular product in the city of Spring Valley. They want 65% to be theirs. In other words, what this means is market the percentage of the market. I mean, there's another way to market, to increase the market altogether. Let's say 100,000 people want product X, and you do some great piece of marketing, and therefore 120,000 people want product X. Well, then you've increased the market. Here, you're not really increasing the market when you increase the share. What you're doing is keeping the market the same size and trying to increase your share of the market. And both of them can be legitimate strategies. I mean, I remember in the 1980s, New York Telephone used to have these commercials encouraging people to use the telephone. It said, your mom is feeling lonely, why not pick up the phone and call her? Well, they weren't trying to increase their share in the market. Frankly, they had a monopoly. They had pretty much everybody used them. I mean, this was before the days of cell phone. You pretty much had to use them, and there was nobody else. So it really wouldn't pay for them to advertise to try to get an increased share in the market because they already had 100%. So the only way they could make more money is to increase the size of the market. But in this slide over here, we're talking about share of the market. If there are 100 telephones being sold and you sold to 100 people and you sold 50 of them last year, to try to sell 60 of them to those same 100 customers this year. And increasing the share of customers there are certainly many different ways to do that. Here are some examples. Offer a greater variety of products. People want choice. And if you have cell phones in different colors and different styles and different prices and different everything, people are more likely to wander into your store. You can encourage customers that you do have to buy more products. That isn't even necessarily an issue of share of customers, but it's an issue of increasing your market. Those same 100 people, rather than buying 100 cell phones, maybe they'll buy 110 cell phones because you managed to convince 10 of them that they need 2 phones. Somehow you did this wonderful marketing piece, and 10 of them go in and buy 2 phones. So you still have the same 100 customers, but instead of selling 50 phones to the 50 people that come to you, you've sold 60 phones to the 50 people that come to you, because you have now convinced them that they need something more. Employees also can be trained to cross-sell and upsell. Cross-sell means to sell something that the customer didn't walk in with the intention of buying. And this happens all the time. You go into an appliance store and you say, I would like one of those top loader dryers. Actually, the top loader dryer is really the upsell example. The cross sell is if you walk in looking for a TV, and while you're talking about the TV, then they say, well, do you also need an air conditioner? Hey, summer's coming. And yeah, I need an air conditioner. That's a good idea. And then you go ahead and buy an air conditioner too, or an air conditioner instead, and that's called a cross sell. Someone comes into the store to buy a TV, you try to sell them an iPod in addition to a TV. You're adding something to the customer's base. Then the next example, I just changed some of the examples over here. So we have the next example is, let's say, the clothes washer that I just mentioned. You walk in asking for one of those $350 top loader clothes washers, and they say, well, that's a very good product. We can sell it to you, but, we've got this really great side loader, the ones that cost $700 or $800, but, it saves you all this water, and it's so much easier, and it's fun, and whatever. You give all the other technique, and you market it. That's called an upsell. Customer went in for an inferior or a lower end product, and you sold the customer a higher end product. The customer went in to buy a 5200 BTU air conditioner, and you say, well, the room that you're talking about is 300 square feet. A 5200 BTU air conditioner is not going to cut it. You should really get a 7000 BTU air conditioner. You have now succeeded in an upsell. You've gotten your company more profits by selling a more expensive product. You also, of course, have to look at it sometimes from the vantage point of the local retailer. It's one thing to be the manufacturer and try to market the product as a whole to the world, but the local retailer is the individual store. The local retailer sells goods or supplies in small quantities directly to the consumer, but of course they are also affected by global competition. Local retailers may come from abroad. For example, instead of going down to my local store to buy a tablet or to buy an MP3 player or whatever, I could instead order it on Amazon, or I could buy it from bestbuy.com, or go to a neighboring city and go to the mall and buy it there. So local retailers deal with their consumers in their immediate geographic area, but of course they also are impacted by global competition. Components may be produced or assembled abroad. They could be sold to you over the internet. And also, of course, that's one of the reasons why it's important for local retailers to have global suppliers and also customers outside their own district. People who have their own stores may also set up a website. They may also be able to sell things to people outside of their own immediate geography. The second chapter is partnering to build customer relationships. This is the way in which a company, through its marketing techniques, tries to make sure that the customer, establish a relationship with the customer so that the customer will come to you and purchase whatever goods and services you're providing. Market development strategies are critical. Market development strategies identify and develop new market segments for current company products. If you sell telephones, for example, to residential people, residences, maybe you can expand by looking at also selling to businesses, or also selling, secondary phones, or phones that have greater range in terms of wireless capabilities. Whatever. Marketing strategies is when you take the products that you have already and try to establish a little bit of a broader base for yourself, developing new market segments, more customer possibilities for products that you already offer. You can identify a new market for your current products, like the business market for the telephones that you used to only sell to residences, or, for example, if you sell scooters, generally speaking, you sell them as toys, well, then you may beef them up a little bit and maybe try to sell them to commuters as well. These are ideas of trying to develop new segments of the market to the people that you're already listing. You're basically selling the same product, but you're trying to sell it to new people. A company can also look for different demographic markets or different geographical markets. Well, you only sold things in the Northeast, and now you want to try to move to Wisconsin and Minnesota and places like that. Or you want to try to move to California, you want to try to move to other countries. And you can also try to expand to international markets. That's one possible development strategy, trying to increase the ability of your company to sell to various other markets. And then what you can also do is try to establish new products, offering new modified or new products. Here's an example that we have in the slide, and then I'll give you another example that I remember from my own personal experience. 3M, which actually, believe it or not, stands for Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, MMM, that's where 3M comes from, sells Post-it notes of all kind. If you have Post-it notes, you probably have 3M products even on your desk. Most of the products are sold to office managers and students, and to increase the company growth, a marketer might adjust the product to include different types of products that are maybe similar to the ones that are already manufactured, but a little beefed up. Things like neon, flashy colors, bold designs when marketing to students, whereas when it comes to office managers, more neutral business-like colors could be used, like, for example, the yellow ones, the regular yellow Post-it notes that you probably have in your desk somewhere. In fact, Triple M, which used to be all about specifically office supplies, has branched out dramatically. I have their website over here to show you what they've done. This is shop3m.com, and you can see they have clear tasting water and tattoo aftercare, their automotive shop, furniture, lamps, all sorts of things, because 3M has gotten to the point where they realize that they probably can't make a huge company out of just selling Post-it notes, so they sell all kinds of different things. Another example, I don't think they exist anymore, but there was a company, I think it was called NITA, N-I-T-A, and their expression, their slogan was, "All we make are great copiers." That was their commercials. They had their commercials that said, we don't make telephones, we don't make staplers, all we make are great copiers, and we make them the best. And eventually they realized that just making copiers wasn't going to service their business that well. So what they decided to do, they decided to branch out, but they didn't want to change their slogan. They didn't want to change their big marketing idea. So they went into fax machines, and they started selling fax machines, which they called long distance copiers. So they're still copiers. They still said, "All we make are great copiers, even long-distance ones." That's what happens when it comes to marketing. Sometimes one product just won't cut it. It won't allow you to establish your growth, or the product itself becomes obsolete, or there becomes too much competition in the industry, and therefore you want to branch out into other products. An important concept in marketing is the ROI. ROI stands for return on investment. So the marketing ROI is the return on your marketing investment. If you spend $3 million on a Super Bowl commercial, the question is, are you going to recoup $3 million from that advertisement? Now, it might not be direct, of course. It might not be, when you buy a $3 million Super Bowl commercial, it might not be able to directly trace $3 million new dollars of service. Things like goodwill, increased reputation are, of course, part of the calculus, are, of course, part of the things that you have to look at. But overall, you still have to look at return on marketing investment. This is the net return from a marketing investment divided by the cost of the marketing investment. If you put $1 million into marketing, and because of that campaign you increased your business by $2 million, well, then you've made an extra $1 million. You've made 100% on your investment. You invested $1 million and you made $2 million. So you got 100% of your original investment. If you invested $1 million and you brought in $1,100,000, well, then you got a 10% return on your investment, because you sold an extra $100,000 worth of products. On the other hand, if you put $1 million into marketing and you only increased your business by $900,000, well, then essentially you've lost on your marketing. You've got a negative 10% return on your investment. So that obviously is the sort of thing you want to try to avoid. But of course, you do have to take into account things that may not be obvious. You have to look at marketing performance measures, things like brand awareness, sales, market share. In other words, what has happened to your sales? Are customers more aware of your brands? Before you ran the campaign, maybe 30% of people knew that you sold great calculators, and now maybe 40% of people know that you sell great calculators. How does that translate into sales? How does that translate in terms of your market share? If before your great campaign you had 30% of the market share, and after the great campaign you have 35% of the market share, you of course have increased your market share by 5%. Customer-centered measures also have to be taken into account. Customer acquisition. Did you acquire new customers through this marketing campaign, which is the purpose of most marketing campaigns? Customer retention. Did you keep consumers to come back to your product? Customer lifetime value. What do they give you over the course of the customer's lifetime of using these products? One car is the sale of one car, but if the customer keeps taking the car back to your dealership to get it serviced and keeps buying new cars from your dealership whenever they need a new car, well, now all of a sudden you've made a customer for life, and that obviously gives you a tremendous amount more of this sort of benefit. You also, of course, have to look at customer-centered measures because you're looking at the extent to which these marketing techniques build your relationship with your customer. And finally in this chapter, a very important element of any marketing strategy is a company's mission statements. A company's mission statement is really an overarching, usually a one-paragraph statement, could be less than 100 words in most cases, that will tell anybody that's reading it, and the employees, to kind of focus the employees and to focus the managers of the company on what it is the company is there to do. What is it that it's there to sell? Now, I guess in one, you can just say a company is there to make money. I guess that's the mission of most companies. But how are they to make money? What kind of products are they trying to produce? What kind of companies are they trying to sell? This is a statement of the organization's purpose and what the organization wants to accomplish. That includes things like what is the business, who is the consumer, what do the consumers value, and what should the business be. This should be based on the market that you are targeting. It shouldn't a mission statement shouldn't say, we're selling staplers that are black, or we're selling staplers that are lots of colors. Instead, it should say something like, we are servicing the needs of offices to staple their papers together. Of course, that's a bit of an oversimplification. There aren't too many companies that just make staplers and nothing else. But if you had a stapler company, you would phrase the mission statement in terms of the technology that it uses, the market that it's servicing, etc. Let's take a look at a couple of mission statements. Mission statements are a little different, of course, whether they're for-profit or non-profit companies. Here's some examples of some mission statements. These are non-profit companies. The San Diego Zoo, for example. Now, San Diego Zoo, we all know, is just, it's a zoo. But what does the mission statement say? It's a conservation, education, and recreation organization dedicated to the reproduction, protection, and exhibition of animals, plants, and their habitats. What is this establishing? It doesn't say, we've got lots of animals. It says that we exhibit animals and conserve the animals, educate the people about them, etc. The Mayo Clinic, a hospital, we don't need that. To inspire hope and contribute to health and well-being by providing the best care to every patient through integrated clinical practice, education, and research. Again, the sort of thing that you're focusing on the people you're servicing, not just the services that you're providing. Doctors Without Borders works in nearly 70 countries, providing medical aid to those most in need, regardless of their race, religion, and political affiliation. Again, looking for the services that are produced. Let's look at some for-profit mission statements. This is Apple. Apple's mission statement. I don't know if you can, let me make this a little smaller so you can see the whole thing. There we go. Apple designs Macs, the best personal computers in the world, along with OS X, iLife, iWork, and professional software. Apple leads the digital music revolution with its iPods and iTunes online store. Apple has reinvented the mobile phone with its revolutionary iPhone and App Store, and is defining the future of mobile media and computing with iPad. Okay, so it's probably changed its mission here and there. As they invent new things or as they go into new areas. But again, Apple doesn't just say that we sell iPods and Macs and try to make money, which is fine. But instead what they do is they try to establish the value that they're adding to the industry and the manner in which they're serving the customers. Look at a company like General Motors. General Motors' mission, again, they build cars. Well, what do they say what their mission statement is? We're looking for things that are market-oriented and technology-oriented, not just that we sell products. So what do they say? GM is a multinational corporation engaged in socially responsible operations. Important to put that into your mission statement, that you're trying to be responsible worldwide. Is dedicated to provide products and services of such quality that our customers will receive superior value, while our employees and business partners will share in success, and our stockholders will receive a sustained superior return on their investment. It's bizarre. There's nothing about cars in here. And General Motors produces some things other than cars as well, but obviously the vision statement mentions the automotive industry. The mission statement doesn't even mention the automotive industry. It doesn't even mention the fact that they produce cars. We produce stuff in a socially responsible fashion, etc., etc. So the mission statement is designed to establish that, we strive for the greatest technology and to service the market that needs us. Something like that. Next, we're going to look at Chapter 3 and analyzing the market environment. The marketing environment is, of course, the environment in which the company has to operate. It consists of actors, the people in the company, the consumers, and the forces that are outside the market that affect the marketing's ability, the marketing management's ability to maintain successful relationships with consumers. The types of markets are the macro environment and the micro environment. Micro environment means small, or the small picture, so to speak. And the micro environment are actors close to the company. Those probably include the employees, the salespeople, the consumers, the people that use the products. Then there's the macro environment that includes larger societal factors, the economy in general, the market in general. So first we're going to look at the micro environment, which includes the company itself, including all of the people that work for the company. That obviously impacts the marketing development's planning strategies, because all the people in the company have to focus on whatever marketing campaign is going on over here. If you're running a campaign saying that the company is really friendly, well, then the company's people have to be really friendly. Otherwise, people will realize very quickly that the marketing just isn't really true. The suppliers are also important. Suppliers are an important link in the value delivery system. Before you market something, that you're going to be able to produce X number of widgets, or you're able to produce these fantastic things, you have to make sure that you have the suppliers that will give you the ability to produce them. Then you have marketing intermediaries. These are people that are going to be necessary in your supply chain to get the consumers and to get the products to the consumers. Resellers, distribution firms, marketing service agencies, which include people like on Madison Avenue, the people that run the advertisements, that dream up the advertisements, that run the newspaper ads, that write the newspaper ads, that write the marketing copy. These are obviously, even if they don't necessarily work for the company, these are people within the micro environment of the company's marketing skills and the marketing techniques, marketing plan. And then you have to look at the competitors. When you market, you can't ignore the competitors. If the competitor is advertising a product at a certain price, you want to be able to market your product in a way that either undersells the competitor, gives the customer a better price, or gives the customer something better for the same money or for more money. The idea is you have to, when you're developing your marketing perspective, you have to look, okay, what is the competition doing? What is the competition advertising? And you have to figure out a way to beat that, or else the competitor is going to get the best of you. The microenvironment also includes the customers that you're dealing with, the consumer, him or herself, that's purchasing your product, reseller, government or international market. If you're marketing to something that can be used by the government, you're marketing something that can be used overseas. And also you have public environments that have to impact your marketing. The financial public is, for example, the stock market. Is this the sort of product that's going to play well when it comes to your stock price? It's one thing you have to think about. The media. Will the media impact? If you're a small little, grocery store, the media probably doesn't have much impact. But if you're United Airlines or General Motors or something like that, you do have to take into account the way the media, the way whatever marketing campaign you're establishing may be looked at by the media. Especially if you're a financial services firm, you've got CNBC and you've got all these other, Wall Street Journal, that are going to be scrutinizing whatever you say. General public, citizen action public, other groups of people that are going to be scrutinizing your marketing campaign. Then you've got the macro environment. The macro environment is the environment of things that are beyond your immediate scope and beyond your control, but are things that you very often can't do a lot about, but you need to be able to adapt to the trends and to what's going on in the macro environment. The demographic environment. Are you selling to groups of people? Or are your customers becoming younger? Are your customers becoming older? Are your customers changing in terms of their ethnicity? Are they changing in terms of their wealth status? You may have to, if the people you're selling to are, unemployment is up and there's a recession and people are losing their jobs, you may not be able to raise your price so easily. You may be focusing, your marketing campaign may focus more on affordability and less on pizzazz and less on, an ability to do fancy things. Natural resources are also important in the macro environment. Will there be enough resources for you to continue your manufacturing in the same way? Technological. Are your products obsolete? I mentioned fax machines before. People who marketed fax machines in the 1990s, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, well, now they've had to move on a little bit because fax machines they're still used, but they're certainly not used nearly as much as they were 20 years ago, because now you've got email and attachments and scanners and whatnot, and you can just scan things and email them, or take a picture of them with your phone and text the picture. You don't really need fax machines as much as you used to, although they're still used. Then there are some things that are just not used at all anymore. Typewriters, I guess they're used to some extent, but typewriters have pretty much disappeared, whereas 40, 50 years ago, they were the number one piece of office equipment that every office needed. So you may have to change your marketing strategies based on technological changes. Political changes. Are you something that, like an oil company or a solar energy company? Are you an education company where there are issues in the federal government and state government that may make it easier or more difficult for you to operate your business? And then there are cultural issues. You have to look at what society's basic values are. Are society's values changing to the extent that your product might be more or less acceptable to people? And you may have to take this into account when you make a determination of what product lines to go into. All these things are important issues in the macro environment. Here are some examples of factors in the macro environment. Demographics. Demographics, of course, look at the size of the market, the age of the market, the gender of the market. Are you looking to sell primarily to men or women or both? Race of the market. These different demographics require different handling of marketing. The quote-unquote me generation, which we'll see in the next slide, the baby boomer generation in the United States. People born between about 1946 and 1964, give or take, are usually called the baby boom generation because there were a lot of children during those eras. The post-World War II generation. And, what are the sorts of products that they're looking for as they become older? Financial products, second homes, things like that. What are the sorts of things that they're looking for? Other generations that grew up in other eras where the culture was different may have slightly different needs. Here's an example, the quote-unquote the me generation. That's a Chinese phenomenon. And that's based on the Chinese population control measures. For the last several decades, China has been limiting the number of children that a family can have. And it comes to the point whereas in the old days, maybe there were many children for each adult. Now there are many adults for each child. There are 6 adults for each child. First, 6 adults purchasing goods and services for each child, so you can imagine how spoiled some of these children are. It used to be you had, one nuclear family supporting 4 or 5 children. Now you've got parents and grandparents all supporting this one kid, and this one kid is getting a lot more attention and presence, I guess, than they used to. And as they've become adults, they've created markets for financial services, restaurants, luxury goods, things that their parents may not have had because their grandparents just didn't have the money to give it to them, whereas now there are fewer children. So that's an important distinction in the market. If you're going to go into China and start to market cars, nice smartphones, restaurants, things like that, whereas maybe 30, 40 years ago, people would go in and market things like bicycles and things that are a little bit more practical and less of luxuries. Then we've got the baby boomers. As we discussed before, the baby boomers, people born approximately between 1946 and 1964, have also become a powerful force in changing the market. Maturing baby boomers who are now getting close to retirement age, or at least many of them are, maybe not the younger ones, but even the younger ones are starting to get a little bit long in the tooth. And they hold about 3/4 of the nation's assets and account for 50% of the consumer spending. And the reason is because right now it's 2014, so they are between 68 and 50 and is between 50 and 68 years old based on these numbers. Well, these are the people nearing the ends of their careers who have already built up and gotten to the highest levels of industry. That's usually what happens when people get late in their careers. They've now risen, they've gotten promoted, they've gotten raises, and they're near the end of the line, but now they're at the height of their earning power in their 50s and 60s and about to retire. And so therefore, they are now setting the market for things like vacations, financial products, things like that. They're more likely to retire later as people's health gets better and better. They're more likely to retire later, retire maybe in their late 60s or early 70s, as opposed to previous generations which retired in the low to mid 60s. They see themselves as entering a new phase in life, and they don't view themselves as getting older. This is obviously not true for everyone, but it may be a trend in general that marketers have to watch out for. Baby boomers don't want to hear on TV commercials, "You're getting old, get this product." What they want to hear maybe instead is, "You're entering the next phase of your life. Maybe you want a new vacation home or a new fast car or, whatever it is." Then also you have to look at, whenever you're doing any kind of marketing campaign, you have to look at different types of markets. You have to focus on different types of targets at the same time. You have to look at population segments based on age. When you're trying to appeal to one group, another group may be turned off. If you're marketing things, if you have a clothing store and you have, if you go to the mall sometimes, you see these clothing stores and you have these really garish colors and flashing neon lights and real loud rock music, well, that may attract, kids who are 18, 19, 20 years old, but, 50, 60-year-old walking by the store might just keep on walking. So it's the sort of thing you got to watch out. You got to target your market and figure out who should you target. Should you target the 60-year-old? Maybe have a little soft classical music coming from the store and, light colors, or should you target the 19-year-olds with the neon lights and the loud music? So even within generations, the millennial generation, people that came of age around the year 2000, can be split into tweens, young children, teens, young adults, and you have to make sure you know who you're targeting before you establish your plan. You can also target based on lifestyle. Are you trying to target people who are more likely to stay home? Or are you trying to target people who want to, city, urban people who want to enjoy the nightlife, etc., etc.? Then you have to look at the beliefs of your audience. There are core beliefs that you have to account for. You don't want to offend the sensibilities or the belief systems of your market because then they're going to turn you off. Schools, religious institutions, business, the government, things like that. Marketing, for example, to people who you think have a strong work ethic. Maybe you can market products by telling the people that this will increase their productivity. Then there are secondary beliefs that also may need to be focused on, or may need to be taken into account, but are the sort of thing that you might be able to change the beliefs of people or alter them with marketing campaigns. Now let's look at managing marketing information. That obviously is a critical component of marketing, figuring out what your consumer base is and how to best manipulate it, so to speak. And the first thing is, of course, marketing research. Figure out what your market is. And to figure out what your market is, first thing you need to do is research, which is designing, collection, and analyzing the data that's relevant to your particular market. How do you start that process? Well, the first thing is you have to define a problem and research objectives. You may want to be figuring out what is the target market for this particular product, how many people between age 20 and 35 are going to want to go to work on a moped. Whatever your question is, you have to carefully define that question before you start analyzing it. Develop the plan for collecting information. It could be something like a survey of random people, focus group, asking customers to walk through your store, whatever the plan is, or you could do multiple plans. You have to clearly define it before you don't want to start doing it ad hoc and before figuring out that it is irrelevant. Collecting and analyzing data once you get your data, and then interpreting and reporting the findings. That's obviously a lot easier said than done. It sounds pretty easy, but it's not that easy. So let's start by looking at it in a little bit more depth. Research plans are presented as written proposals and calls for gathering primary and secondary data. Primary data is data gotten directly from your researching activities. It has to be relevant, it has to be accurate, it has to be current, it has to be unbiased. If you have a survey, the survey should be done in a scientific way, calling people at random. If you have a focus group, the focus group shouldn't be people who are relevant to your company, who have some kind of a predisposition. Designing primary data collection includes observation, or survey or experiment, seeing how people react to your product, asking your people about your product that you're showing them, asking your focus group, mail, telephone, personal, or online by contacting people. Sampling unit. These things are things that you have to know a little bit of statistics for, but you want to get a scientifically valid sample size. If you want to call 500 people and ask them something, you want to commission a research firm to do that. Well, you can't call, for example, 500 people the first 500 people in the phone book. It's just not going to be good enough. You want to get them randomly. You don't want to call all people of the same ethnicity or all people of the same age group. You want to call people randomly enough so that you get a good scientific data pool. Then you have secondary data. Other surveys and research that was done by other people that you can take and then you can apply to your own purposes. Then once you establish how you're going to get your data, then you have to make your observations, and that's gathering data by observing people, actions, and situations. Here are some quick examples. Observing traffic patterns to see where a new grocery store should develop. Now you can do it yourself by having somebody watching how many cars go by or how many people come to an area, or you can look at government patterns. Sometimes the government the state and local authorities put out these little wires to see how many people go by a particular curve in order to figure out whether to put a traffic light there. Maybe you can co-opt that data to see, well, okay, if that's so busy that it needs traffic lights, maybe it could also use a supermarket. That's the sort of thing that you'd want to look at. The purchase of soft drinks or lottery tickets among different genders of age groups. These are things the data is already available. You probably don't have to find it yourself. Listening in on blogs and social networks, going on Facebook, going on Twitter, going on things like that to see what people are saying about a particular product. Should your retail store start offering these new toy cars? Well, what are people saying about it? If people are saying it's a great thing, maybe it would be a good idea to stock it. Questionnaires. Questionnaires are a very important and very common research instrument. And you can ask questions that are close-ended, or you can ask questions that are open-ended. Closed-ended questions gives the answer that you need by having somebody say yes or no, or multiple choice. Do you prefer Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts? Do you like pizza? What's your gender? These are all things that are closed-ended. The respondent can only give one of a couple of choices, yes or no, or A, B, C, or D, something like that. Then there are open-ended questions. Now, of course, closed-ended questions have the advantage that you can neatly categorize them. You can say, 68% of people responding answered yes. 24% of people said that they were born after 1975 in this group. Whatever. But open-ended questions have the advantage of, the disadvantage in that you can't really get neat patterns out of them because somebody has to interpret them, and interpreting them might not be so easy, but you can also get more detailed feedback and ideas. Then you have secondary data. Secondary data is data that was collected by others, perhaps for other purposes. Internal databases, commercial data services, government sources, which are very important. If you're looking to produce education, you can look at the statistics from the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that will tell you, which industries are in demand and to what extent. And secondary data very often is used as a starting point. Okay, we know that this particular field, the computer, information technology is in demand. Well, okay, now maybe we should do another survey in our area. How many people want to go into information technology? The BLS told us that information technology is growing faster than average as a profession, but now we have to go see, okay, what do people in our area, do they want to do that? Example, you want to determine whether no smoking policies have impacted employee morale. You may be able to find different studies that were established, that were run by states or run by the federal government, run by cigarette companies, whatever the source is. You may have to take the source with a grain of salt. You may not necessarily be able to put 100% confidence in companies that may be biased, but you have to take all that into account, of course. Then you have this idea of marketing intelligence. Marketing intelligence is a little bit of a vague, amorphous concept, the sort of thing that you may not be able to quantify, but it's the sort of thing that as a sum total can help you with your marketing strategies. The systematic collection and analysis of publicly available information about customers, competitors, development, what are the trends in the industry? How can we take advantage of those trends? Things like that. Here's an example. Sam wants to run for supervisor of the local school district. He would like to hand-deliver campaign materials, but he needs to know where the voters live. Having a list of registered voters and addresses is a great tool for planning actual visits. Just knocking on every door is not a good idea. In other words, you want to try to specify your knowledge so that whatever it is you're trying to do, whether knocking on people's doors or selling products to people, getting people to visit a website, getting people to vote a particular way, you want to try to use the general market intelligence, things that the data has for you, to try to indicate where the best place to focus your resources are, rather than just focusing your resources at the public at large. If you're advertising should you advertise on the internet to the world? Should you advertise in a local newspaper? Should you advertise in a national newspaper, on the radio, on television, on local stations, on citywide stations, on countrywide stations? These are all things that you need to look and see, where is your target market going to be, and focus your advertising and marketing efforts on your target market specifically. Chapter 5 is about understanding consumer and business buyer behavior. Obviously, in order to market, you need to understand what your consumers are going to want. Okay, so consumer behavior refers to the behavior of the individuals who make the purchases. Marketing is primarily to the people who are going to buy from you, of course. And the 4 P's are the 4 concerns that affect the consumer as a general principle. The 4 P's are product. Obviously, you need a product that the consumer wants. A price. Good price, always important. A place, the location in which the product is sold and how it can be delivered, and the market in general of the place that you're selling it. And promotion, making sure that your product is adequately promoted to your particular consumer. These are the 4 main ways in which you're going to try to make sure that the consumer is attracted to your particular product. Make sure you have a good product, good price, good location in terms of where you're selling it, where you're marketing it, and of course making sure to promote it. Other things that are included in buyer behavior are psychological factors, including motivation. How do you motivate a buyer to go out and get a particular product? Do they need the latest smartphone? Well, maybe if they perceive that everybody has it, then they'll have it too. Perception. What's the perception of your product? Learning. Do the consumers know enough about your product to know that they want it? And finally, beliefs and attitudes of the consumer as well. Psychological factors, let's go through them a little bit more in depth. Perception is the process by which people organize and interpret information. The perception is something that's a little bit more subtle than education or knowledge. It's the sort of thing that people perceive. People, by all sorts of different types of information that's given to the consumer, they generate an idea. They generate just a feeling for what the product is and how valuable the product is. How do you influence perception? Well, perception again is a little more subtle, so you can't just tell the buyer a bunch of facts, and that includes feelings of the consumer themselves, selective distortion, retention, and attention. Distortion is the idea that people are going to take things a little bit out of context. Make sure that you don't use phrases that could be offended even when taken out of context in advertisements. How much the consumer actually retains and how much the consumer actually pays attention to your commercial. Is it the sort of commercial that's in the middle of a game that the consumer has no interest in and is leaving the room, or is it something that holds the consumer a little bit more captive? That's why I mentioned Super Bowl commercials earlier. Super Bowl commercials are very often effective. One of the reasons why is because people actually sit there and want to watch the commercials during the Super Bowl. They think they're going to be funny, they think they're going to be clever, whatever it is. So that's, the amount of attention is also very important. It can't be 100% controlled by marketers. It can't be 100% controlled by companies. It can be influenced. You make a funny commercial, it's more likely that they're going to be to have attention, but it can't be guaranteed. So no marketer can guarantee that a consumer will pay attention to an ad, but an ad can certainly make an ad that is more memorable. And people, of course, use selective attention because they can't pay 100% attention to everything all of the time. So if you look at the way the buyer actually makes a determination, which is important in determining your marketing strategy, first the buyer recognizes a problem. My washing machine is broken, I need a new one. What do I need to solve that problem? Okay, well, I need a new washing machine. Product specification. Well, I guess in this case it would be quite easy. I want a washing machine. Do I want a front loader? Do I want a side loader? Do I want one that's going to cost a lot of money? Do I want one that's going to last a long time? Supplier search. The consumer then goes ahead and searches out, okay, who sells these things? What stores, what websites? Proposal solicitation. Maybe you go to a salesperson. Sometimes you can skip that step, but you can walk into a store and you say, I want the washing machine. Show me what you got. Proposal solicitation. Okay, how much is this going to cost from this store? How much is this going to cost from that store? You're soliciting a proposal from the various merchants. Might not be a formal process, but it does happen whenever you shop around for something. Then you have the supplier selection, where the buyer actually makes the decision in terms of which merchant he or she is going to order it from. You have the order routine specification, where you get down to the nitty-gritty in terms of exactly what is being ordered, what the delivery is, what the price is, etc. And finally, the buyer takes it home, but then you have an equally important step. You have performance review. Okay, it's done in terms of the sale itself, but is the buyer happy? And that's an important step, because if the buyer is happy, the buyer, of course, is more likely to come back. Another important aspect to marketing, both pre and post-sale, is problem recognition. Problem recognition is need recognition. It's the sort of thing where the marketer needs to understand what it is that the consumer wants, what it is that the consumers need. Now, marketers, of course, can try to convince people in terms of what they want. They can use advertising. They can make buyers aware about certain potential problems. Their water in everybody's house contains a lot of chemicals. You really, really need a water purifier. Now, the consumer might not realize that originally, but the marketer, the seller, can educate the consumer about what the consumer needs. Obviously, what the marketer is going to try to do is convince the consumer, yes, you need our product. And then you can offer solutions as to the newly recognized problem. That's true with very often niche products that, are not really the sort of thing that the car commercial doesn't have to come up and say, you need a car. Because, people want cars. Generally speaking, people want to drive cars. When it comes to things like water purifiers, certain types of drugs, certain types of health foods, things like that, very often you'll see part of the marketing influence is convincing the market that, yes, there is actually a need for this. In that sort of case, you're not necessarily just looking for market share, you're also looking to expand the market in the first place. Then when it comes to repeat customers, when you're a marketer, you also have to look at other aspects of situations. There are rebuys, where the consumer needs a second one, a car, a phone, an MP3 player, pair of scissors, stapler, whatever. Just buy the same thing over again, it's all you need. On the other hand, the buyer may want to relook at new suppliers and say, okay, maybe somebody else will sell it a little cheaper. Maybe somebody else will give me something more for it. And then there is something that is a new task, where the buyer hasn't necessarily bought this product before, and the buyer is really new to the market over here. And the big opportunity here for a marketer is that you can put a substantial effort to collecting information to make sure that you understand the marketer's message, and that's why advertising can be very important at this stage. For new people to the product, to the area, marketing can be especially important. When it's talking about a rebuy, well, you already know what you like in many cases. When you're talking about somebody that's new to the market and has never bought a car before, or has never bought a computer before, or has never bought an iPhone before, well, then the opportunity is, of course, there much more strongly for the marketer to establish that theirs is the best. And, of course, the challenge is that there's also an equal effort coming from the competition. Next, we're going to look at targeting customers and creating value for specific segments of the market that you're looking for. And that's really all about segmentation. Segmentation is, okay, well, you're not trying to sell this to everybody in the world. Who are you trying to sell this to? What is your target market? Segmentation is the process of dividing a market into smaller segments with distinct needs, characteristics, or behaviors that may require different types of strategies. Some of the variables that are included in segmentation include geographic segmentation, people from the Northeast, people from the South. If it's air conditioning, maybe it's going to, you have to look at the Phoenix area, and then you have to look at the San Francisco area. It's going to be a lot different demand for it. What's the demographic? Are these rich people? Are these poor people? Do they belong to a particular ethnic group? Do they have certain preferences in that regard? Psychographic. What are the psychological aspects or psychological characteristics of your target market over here? Are you looking, if you're a sports car, maybe you're going to be segmenting people who are going through a midlife crisis or something like that. And finally, the behavioral segmentation. You may want to target people who behave in a certain manner, people who spend a lot, people who eat very healthy. Something like that. If you're an organic food store, you may want to target people who tend to eat healthy. There's no particular best way to segment. You have to look at the particular product that you're looking for. So geographic segmentation breaks up your consumer base by different nations, by regions, states, cities, counties, neighborhoods, and in all of these things, you have to look at people in particular areas have different buying behaviors, different tastes, and different preferences in terms of the services they need. Maybe people from some countries are a little bit more extravagant. People from some cities are a little bit more thrifty. Maybe people from some neighborhoods like certain products more than others. You have to realize that high-speed sports cars may not sell so well in the middle of huge cities where there's a lot of traffic, whereas big trucks, Ford F-150 might do well out in the country where people need it. There are farmers who need to lug big, heavy loads. Ford F-150 might not do as well in the middle of Manhattan, where there's just really no place to put it, and it's just going to take off people's mirrors if it drives around too much. But the point is, you have to look at segmenting your geography for many products that you're selling. You also, of course, need to target your specific market, and targeting is the process of evaluating each market's attractiveness and selecting one or more segments to enter. Which specific market do you want to go after? There's the market of older men, and there's the market of teenage girls, and there's the market of Hispanic people in Florida, and then there's lots of different types of markets. And then you have to decide, okay, based on your product and based on your ability to market, which one or ones do you want to go after? You can use undifferentiated marketing or mass marketing. This is when you're pretty much targeting everybody. You could put an ad on TV on a nationwide event. That's pretty much advertising to the whole country. You can use differentiated marketing, which is segmented. toward a particular segment of the population. You can also try concentrated or niche marketing. You're marketing towards a specific segment of the people. Maybe towards older people with certain drugs, or towards younger people with certain music making devices, things like that. And if you concentrate it especially, you may get to the point of micro-marketing, where you're taking the products towards specific individuals in specific locations. Maybe you're talking about enormous mansions. You're talking about just a few people that you're selling to because most people simply can't afford your services, or most people can't afford what you're looking for. So that's really what a niche market is. A niche market is a subset of the market in which a particular product focuses. It's a very small need, but the reason why you do it is either because there's very little competition, and you're the only ones, or one of the few that are actually selling, so you hope you can make money that way, by getting a large share of a very small market, or if the niche market is very lucrative. You could be selling sports cars, maybe you make $100,000 on each sale you make, or something like that, so you can really you can do well in that respect. So the niche market defines the features aimed at satisfying a particular market needs, the price range, production quality, and the demographics that you're intended to impact. You're looking for a small market, and you want to tailor your product exactly for what the niche market is. Particular type of drug that fights a particular type of disease, well, obviously the niche market is the people that have that particular type of disease. So companies with limited resources, relatively small companies, often benefit from niche marketing where they don't have to maybe go up against the massive companies. Not so easy to sell, to sell and try to underprice Walmart or Target or something like that. But if you can target your goods, so to speak, to a particular subset of people that enjoy your services, that enjoy whatever it is that you can provide, you can make money that way. So they can compete with other companies, even larger ones, by focusing their limited resources and serve niches that are overlooked by other competitors. You sell a particular type of supply, particular type of martial arts supply, or supply for enhancing music playing, or whatever. Thing is, a company like Amazon, a company like Walmart's got a lot more ability to focus, but maybe they're not focusing on that particular market. Maybe they're focusing on other aspects, and you could take advantage of the whole in that respect. What do you consider in making a targeting strategy? First of all, your resources. Are you able to design a very heavy marketing strategy for a particular market? Do you have enough money? Do you have the expertise to run the kinds of commercials that are going to identify with your market? The product variability. How different is this product than the other products that are competing with it? The more unique your product, the more likely it is you are to be successful if you successfully target the market that's interested in your unique product. The product's life cycle stage, you may have to change your strategy and adapt as you move along. When you introduce a new product, it's usually more practical to introduce only one product at a time and market to as vast a number of people as possible. As you move along and you've gotten a toehold in the market already, well, then you may want to vary. You already have your toehold. You've already sold to a lot of the people who are going to be your customers. Well, how do you get repeat customers? How do you get other people? How do you encroach on other areas, maybe using the resources that you got from selling your first product? So at that point, you may want to differentiate a little bit. And market variability is the idea that buyers don't have the exact same tastes. If it's the sort of thing that everybody wants, if it's breakfast cereal or something like that just most people, just it's not that much of a difference. People like it because they need it. Just basic things, clothing, overcoats, these are the sorts of things that pretty much everybody needs. Well, then you might as well undifferentiated marketing. You don't have to target a specific niche of people. If you're selling a sweater, well, people across this ideological economic spectrum like sweaters. Yeah, a little high end, a little more low end, but basically you put on sweaters for the entire country. On the other hand, if most buyers have very different tastes, in luxury cars, maybe certain types of specialty restaurants, things like that, well, then you might want to focus specifically on the segment that's most likely to give you the best return. And of course, you have to focus on your competitors' marketing strategies to try to outwit them. Then you have this idea of differentiation. Differentiation is how you differentiate your own product from those of your competitors. You can differentiate yourself by the product itself. My product is better than your product. My battery lasts longer than your battery. My wristwatch is more accurate than your wristwatch, whatever. You can differentiate yourselves in service. We've got 24/7 telephone support. We'll give you a lifetime support if you need help, whatever. Channels differentiation. How do you advertise? If your competitors advertise only on local radio and TV, maybe a web campaign would be more effective. Then again, maybe it won't. People differentiation. You can say to your customer, we're the only people that have the expertise in this particular area. And your image differentiation, trying to keep your own reputation to the point where people want to use you because of your reputation. Product's position. The way in which the product is defined by consumers on important attributes, and the place that the product occupies in the consumer's mind. You want to always position your product into the maximum effectiveness possible. That's when you hear the word product position, it just means, okay, how does it stand up in the minds of the consumers relative to other marketing, relative to other competition, And the competitive advantage, you have to figure out, what do you offer? Do you offer greater value? Do you offer greater customer service? Do you offer lower prices? Do you offer prettier product? Whatever it is, you got to figure that out. You have to gain some sort of a competitive advantage. If you don't have any competitive advantage over your consumers, then it's going to be very difficult to convince the customers to come to you. And that includes, of course, channel differentiation. Channel differentiation is one of the things that we discussed before in terms of differentiation. And that includes methods by which you get your word out. That includes their channel's coverage, expertise, and performance, the manner in which they're able to get their word out to the consumers. And these include the ways in which you can differentiate yourself include things like customer service, delivery speed, packaging, transportation type, etc., etc. These are just some of the ways you can differentiate yourself from your competitors. Chapter 7 is about product, services, and brands, building customer value. Aside from reaching the customer and targeting the customer, properly segmenting the market and all that other stuff, well, now we got to build the value in the customer to the company. First of all, we got to figure out what a product is. Well, a product is pretty much anything that can make you money. It includes anything that can be offered in the market for attention, acquirement, use, or consumption, and can satisfy any want or need of anybody. It could be something you make money out of, or it could be something that you don't make money out of. For example, Facebook doesn't make money when people sign up, but they do make money when people advertise. Well, part of the product that they sell is or something that they give away for free. The ability to to set up an account. And that allows them to sell other products. Many people give away things for free to some consumers in order to get their name out and in order to be able to make money in other ways, such as advertising. A product can include a physical object, like many products. You go into a store and you buy something, a service, an event, people that will lend their services to someone for whatever reason, that will lend their expertise to someone, a particular place, an organization, idea, or any combination. One type of product is a convenience product. A convenience product is a form of product that is used by the consumers for their personal consumption. Bought by the final consumer, they're purchased frequently and immediately with little comparison shopping. Fast food place probably would be an example. You go in, you order a burger. A gas station would be another example. They're purchased right away. People don't make a lot of decisions. You just get it on the spur of the moment. You don't wake up in the morning and say, I think I'll go get gas today, or I guess you do go to you may know which gas station is cheapest, but you don't think a tremendous amount about convenience products. You just go in and get them. Go into the supermarket, pick up a couple of pieces of fruit, whatever it is. These are convenience products. They're for immediate consumption. They're not the sort of thing that you think a tremendous amount about. They're relatively low priced. People don't have to think about them. They just go ahead and buy them. There's widespread distribution with many convenient location examples: candy, soda, newspapers, soft drinks. I think gasoline is also another good example of a convenience product. Convenience products, of course, there's usually a lot of competition, and when you market, you're trying to get a greater percentage of the market. You're not trying to generate new markets because basically everybody's in the market anyway. You're not going to, convince people to get gasoline. You're not going to have run a television commercial or radio commercial to convince people to put gas in their car. If they're going to have a car, they need to be able to put gas in their car. So what you really need to argue is to differentiate yourself. We're cheaper, we have better gas, we have better service, whatever. A product line is another important term in the vocabulary of products, is a group of products that are closely related to each other because they function in a similar manner, they're sold to the same basic groups, they're marketed to the same type of outlets, and they fall within given price ranges, excuse me. A product line might be a product line of paper utensils, plastic forks and paper plates and paper cups and plastic knives. They're all basically sold by supermarkets or by convenience stores, by places like, Walmart, whatever it is. And they're basically, when a consumer comes in, they're basically going to buy, a whole line of them. A product line length is the number of items in the product line. How many different products are there in this line? It might be something like an auto services place, and like the AutoZone. They might sell motor oil and windshield wiper fluid, and et cetera, et cetera. And the more products they have, the longer their product line. And two different strategies in terms of dealing with a product line are to add products to the line or to stretch the product line downwards. In other words, to try to offer more products at cheaper prices and therefore get a little bit of an edge on your competition. Line stretching is really a type of filling of product filling. An example over here, a very interesting example, is Marriott Hotel. Marriott Hotel owns a lot of other hotel chains. It owns Renaissance Hotels, it owns Fairfield Inn. Fairfield Inn are cheaper, and they also don't have the same kinds of services, whereas Renaissance hotels are much higher end. Hilton does the same thing. Hilton Garden Inn and other types of Hilton resorts, that's just hotel chains. Cars do the same thing. General Motors, for example, makes low-end little Chevrolets, and they also make Cadillacs. Toyota makes the Toyota Corolla and other lower-end cars, and they also have the Lexus branch, which is obviously much higher end. Then, of course, what you also want to do, in addition to having a product line, you want to have a good product mix. And a product mix is all of the product lines that a particular seller offers for sale. A company that offers lots of different product lines is sometimes referred to as a conglomerate because it has lots of different types of products that it offers. When you're measuring a product mix that you offer, the width is the number of product lines the company carries. Procter & Gamble, for example, which is a huge conglomerate, contains a tremendous number of different types of products. Here's just an interesting example of some of the things that Procter & Gamble makes. Procter & Gamble is a single conglomerate, but look what it owns. It owns Nestle and Johnson & Johnson, and actually, I'm sorry, Johnson & Johnson is a competitor of Procter & Gamble. But if you look over here, for example, in Procter & Gamble, they've got Tide. These are just some of the cleaning products they offer. Things like Mr. Clean and Bounty, Gillette, Old Spice, Charmin, Head & Shoulders, Ivory, Cheer, Cascade, Tide, Dawn, Zest, Joy, all owned by Procter & Gamble. You can see some of the other ones, some like Nestle, which is most famous for their chocolate, but they also own things like Gerber and different cat foods and dog foods over here. Johnson & Johnson owns Oral-B and Crest, Tylenol, things like that. So conglomerates like that have a very wide product mix. The length is the number of items in a line. Sony, for example, sells camcorder, digital cameras, memory media, accessories, etc. You sell not only a product, but everything that the consumer needs to deal with that particular product. Then you have depth, the number of versions offered of each product. Remember Procter & Gamble, which owned Tide, Cheer, Gain. These companies all make laundry detergent. You can go to the store, you can go to Target, and you can look at Tide, and next to Tide is Cheer. It looks like they're two different companies, but they're actually both owned by the same company. That's actually for shelf space. So that's one of the reasons why companies do that. They make different versions of really the same basic product because they get more shelf space that way. And finally, consistency. How closely related various lines are. Conglomerates like Procter & Gamble don't have much consistency because their products just all over the map, whereas some companies are very careful to only make products that are in line with their mission, that are in line with some of the things that they make best. Then there are service providers. Service providers is any activity, benefit, or satisfaction that's offered for sale that's intangible. In other words, doesn't actually physically move something. There are many different examples of services companies: banking, hotels, airlines, tax prep, home repairs, hospitals. Fire and police departments are usually run by the government, but they're also service providers. They may not charge for it. They may get their money that are in terms of funded by taxation, but they are service providers. And of course, for service providers, the actual service encounter, the actual customer service, is critical. When you go to Walmart and you buy a canister of Tide laundry detergent, the customer service, I mean, you like it or not like it, but it's just not that big a deal in terms of Tide. Even if you don't like the customer service, you blame Walmart, you don't really blame Tide. Whereas if you go to a restaurant, the service is obviously very critical. If you don't like the service, even if you like the food, you may very well not go back. And that's why customers, based on their perceptions of the service, can be loyal long-term buyers, or you can lose them very easily. And therefore, of course, it's critical that sellers establish sound relationships. No matter how good your marketing is, if the customers don't like your service, they're probably not going to come back. Chapter 8 is new product development and product life cycle. Obviously, both of those things are not directly marketing, but they're related to marketing. Certainly, whatever you develop is the thing that you're going to have to be marketing. New product development means the development of original products, or improvements, modifications, changing things, changing your brand, changing the way your products operate, and essentially anything that changes the nature of your interaction with your consumer. Very, very important to get an idea of how you're going to market the product before you start developing or offering the product in the first place. Marketing in the development process, includes idea screening, trying to make sure that you have the right idea before you start manufacturing the product. Once you manufacture it, you've got to either market or dump it, wasting all the manufacturing process. So obviously the first thing you want to do is make sure that it's a good idea before you start marketing it, before you start manufacturing it in the first place. This is the process that's used to spot good ideas and to drop poor ones. The executives, the heads of the company, are going to be the ones that make the ultimate decision with regarding to whether the product is built. And so they need a description from usually other people in the company that are put in charge of doing this sort of research in terms of the size of the market, product, price, development costs, rate of return, cost to manufacture. All of these things go into account in making a determination of how to produce a product, whether to produce a product, and how much of it to produce. And it's evaluated against a set of company criteria for new products. What kind of profit does it have to make? What kind of price can it be sold at? What kind of deals can be used to market and sell the product? And of course, very often it's done by many people in the company because of the fact that this process is so complex and so important. This includes establishing a product idea in the first place. For the idea, nothing can happen whatsoever. That's the idea of a possible product that the company might be able to offer in the marketplace. Then you developed a product concept, which is much more detailed, stated in meaningful consumer terms. What am I going to manufacture? How am I going to manufacture it? What is the consumer going to use it for? Having a concrete and physical representation of the product is, of course, useful. Models, prototypes. If it's a service, you'd have to maybe have a focus group, which is a group of people that you give the service to so that they can give you feedback on it. You want to actually produce and serve the product in some meaningful way before you actually start to mass manufacture it so that you can have an idea of how the consumers are going to react. And that's also the product of concept testing. You use target consumers. You may hire a focus group of people, of average consumers, that may help you make a determination as to whether this is a good idea. After you finish the manufacture, you're going to have to do a rollout. And of course, this is all part of the process that you want to establish before you start manufacturing it in the first place. So this rollout is a significant product release that's usually accompanied by a strong marketing campaign. In the past we only made staplers and pens and pencils, and now all of a sudden we're going to sell tablets, or we're going to sell wristwatches, or we're going to sell something else. Well, if we're a relatively big company, or even if we're a small store, we're going to have to roll it out. We're going to have to let the public know, hey, now you can come to us for wristwatches. Now you can come to us for, for tablets. Now you can come to us for this new product that we're manufacturing. And so one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to convince our consumers that it makes sense for us to offer this product. If we've only until now been offering products that are totally different from this, the consumers might say, well, we'd rather buy the product from the experts. So a company enters attractive cities or regions one at a time and then tries to build up large market rollout. Now, if it's a huge company like Walmart, it might, roll out a new line of products around the country instantly. But if you are a relatively small company, you might want to have a smaller rollout in a smaller area to see how well it works, before risking the expense involved in a much larger rollout and manufacturing process. This is also done by companies that don't have the capacity or capital or even confidence to introduce in several regions at once. You want to try it once, see if it works, before you invest the resources necessary to roll it out in a second big market or across the country. So the product life cycle, which is really all that this chapter was about, is the course of the product sales and profits. First, it is developed. Then it is introduced to the public, usually through a marketing campaign, and also put in stores if it's a good, or offered if it is a service. Then it grows, hopefully, to the point where you're able to sell whatever you manufacture. It becomes mature, in which it kind of flatlines. In other words, okay, now you're selling however many you can sell. Now you're selling 10,000 units a month. Now you're selling $1 million worth of the service a year, and that's pretty much the way it holds. And that's pretty much what the product does for you. And then eventually, many products decline, which means they start to decrease in value, or they start to decrease in effectiveness, and eventually they may have to be changed or ended. And of course, an important component of this entire chapter is advertising a new product. Advertising expenses remain high when a product is in its growth stage. That advertising could be on, local radio or television. It could be in newspapers. It could be on the internet. It could be it could be in, posting cards, posting advertisements around town. It could take whatever the advertising form makes sense for that particular product. And then at that stage, you also have to worry about competition. Once you roll it out and start advertising it, you have to realize that other people that already offer the product may start advertising against you, or they may start rolling out their own products to compete. And obviously, what you also sometimes need to do is spend a high amount of money on this marketing campaign, on this advertising campaign, in order to offset threats from competition. Chapter 9 is about understanding and capturing customer value. What is it that you need to do to get yourself as large a market share and a larger profit margin as you can? So we're going to discuss various types of pricing and competition in this chapter. The first type is oligopoly, or the oligopolistic. I never even heard that word before, but I do know what an oligopoly is. An oligopoly is a market that consists of only a few major sellers. Something like maybe the major soft drink manufacturing, like soda manufacturing, where you have Coke and Pepsi, and that's pretty much it. Everybody else is much smaller. What else would be considered an oligopoly? Maybe operating systems, where you've got Apple operating, iOS with Apple. You've got Windows. You've got Mac operating system. There just aren't that many major players. I mean, there's also Linux and things like that, but basically you've got a few, two, three, four, five, something like that, major players. Airlines, American domestic airlines. Right now you've got U.S. Air and American are one airline. You've got United, you've got JetBlue, Delta, Virgin America, and Southwest, and that's pretty much it. So it only consists of a few sellers, as opposed to manufacturing, China or paper cups or breakfast cereal. Well, actually, breakfast cereal may also be an oligopoly, but other types of things, office supplies, where there just may be a tremendous number of manufacturers scattered throughout the country. So when you're talking about an oligopoly, when you're talking about something where you've got only a few competitors, domestic airlines is actually probably the best example that I can think of, where there are really only 5 or 6 companies, and there's literally nobody else. There may be a few tiny little airlines like Allegheny Airlines, but pretty much it's a few companies and that's it. It's very difficult for new sellers to enter the market, because in these areas there just is there's a high barrier to entry, like in the case of airlines, or the players that are already in the market are so entrenched that it's just very hard to get a new product into the market. And each seller is alert and responsive to competitors' pricing strategies and moves. That's true, for example, with airline tickets. When when American Airlines drops their price on a particular fare for a particular date, very often you'll see United and Delta follow suit the next day and drop to basically the exact same price on the same route, because they realize that there's tremendous competition. If you want to fly from New York to Chicago and one airline is selling it for $200 and another airline is selling it for $300, well, you realize right away that pretty much nobody's going to go to the $300 service, because they're essentially offering the same service. Psychological pricing. Psychological pricing is establishing a price that, even though it may not be much substantively different from another price, it helps psychologically. Price can influence perceptions of quality. Sometimes, if you can get away with it, you can actually charge a lot of money for something, even though you could theoretically sell it for less, because you want to convey an idea of quality. A bottle of perfume may cost $100, but only have $3 worth of, it only costs you $3 to manufacture it. But people are willing to pay the $100 because people say, wow, there's a $100 product. That must really be good. Now, it doesn't always work like that. You have to already have a good reputation. You have to somehow maintain this good reputation. But if you can do that, that could be an excellent profit strategy. Reference prices are, of course, important, and so that's why many generic brands and store brands place their products in a way that is very easy to compare to other products. Like the example that they put over here is a very good example. Toasted Oats for $1.39 is right next to Cheerios for $3.29. You go into a supermarket, go into A&P, or you go into ShopRite or whatever it is, and you look at the aisle, and you see Kellogg's cereal, and then you see a store aisle, and they're literally put right next to each other to illustrate the fact that they're essentially the same thing and have a $2 price difference between them. Now, it's possible that the store brand isn't as good as the Kellogg's brand or the General Mills brand, and that's why there's a difference in price. But at least if you're trying, nothing you can do about that, I suppose, if you're the store. But what you can do is try to emphasize your cheap price. I've seen some of these generic, like CVS brands or whatever. Sometimes they actually say compare to XYZ, compare to this particular brand. If you have a Toasted Oats cereal, it might say compare to General Mills Cheerios. Or if you have an anti-allergy drug, it might say, compare to Benadryl. And in that case, it may actually literally be the exact same thing as Benadryl, but just has a different name on it. Many times the consumer doesn't have the skills or information needed to figure out whether the price is good. Consumers sometimes see $299.99 in the $200 price range, even though it's really $300. The price appears to be psychologically cheaper. That's why you see in a lot of areas, you see product prices end in 99. Instead of saying $1,000, it's $999.99. For some reason, people automatically look at that and their brain thinks that, oh, it's less than $1,000, when it's really $1,000. You don't see that, by the way, in where the consumer is, you're trying to train the consumer to respect your goods as a high-end, as a high-end good. You go into a fast food store, they might say the burger costs $3.99, but you go into a restaurant, they're not going to tell you, you go into a very fancy restaurant, they're not going to tell you the steak costs $44.99. It just says 45 because it's already, if you say $44.99, it kind of cheapens the product a little bit. So when a consumer is very price sensitive, you're likely to use psychological pricing. Something like a fancy restaurant, which is not that price sensitive because people there usually don't worry so much about the price, otherwise they wouldn't be there. So you don't worry as much about psychological pricing. Then you've got dynamic pricing, pricing that moves back and forth. There are some types of products where the price pretty much stays the same. Apple products, Apple's famous for doing that. Apple doesn't have sales. They have the price, and either you pay the price or you don't buy the product. You want to buy an iPhone 6, or you want to buy an iPad 64 gigabytes. You want to buy or you want to buy an iPod, whatever it is. The price is pretty much what it is. It's $5.99 for their product with this specs, and stores don't put it on sale. Apple doesn't put it on sale, and that's pretty much what it is. But on the other hand, because they have the reputation and they have the marketing to be able to have the confidence to do that. Many products, on the other hand, the price is very dynamic, which means prices have to be adjusted continually to meet the needs of individual customers and situations. Airline pricing, again, very, very dynamic. Airfares change from day to day and even from hour to hour sometimes. Internet sellers like Amazon can use their database to see what people want. And if people want a product, maybe they can charge a little more for it. If they see a product is not selling with their metrics that they get constantly, because they can see what everybody orders, well, then they can turn and drop the price a little bit and see if that helps. Consumers can compare prices for the same or similar products. If you're shopping on the internet, you can just go take Barnes & Noble and Amazon and eBay side by side and see where you can get the best price for the particular product. And you can also change prices according to change in demand. You can charge more at a particular time of year. You can charge more around the holiday time. You can charge less maybe for winter coats in the summer. You can just constantly move the price around in order to get the maximum that you can get while still selling the product reasonably well. Then we got a practice, an illegal practice, or, well, it's a little bit of an oversimplification. It's not necessarily illegal. There are various state and federal laws against it in some scenarios, but I don't know. I'm gonna change this from illegal to sometimes illegal because it's really not always illegal. But anyway, predatory pricing means selling below cost with the intention of pushing a competitor out. For example, if Walmart sees that a mom and pop store open next door and a hardware store, and it's competing with Walmart's hardware department, and they're selling hammers for $5, and Walmart's selling hammers for also $5. Now, Walmart gets their hammer for $4.50, so they make a 50-cent profit on each hammer. So they decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start selling hammers for $4. We're going to take a loss on it, but you know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to come to us, and we're going to drive the hardware store out of business because we're going to undersell all their products. Even if we have to take a loss, it's worth it for us. We do this for a few months. We're going to drive our neighbor out of business, and then once our neighbor goes out of business, then we can do what we want because we don't have competition anymore. That's called predatory pricing. It could be done on a local level, or it could be done on a national level. A company wants to, an airline opens up and starts to offer a fare from New York to Florida that's really, really good service, and the big airlines say, we can't deal with this new competition, so what we're going to do is we're going to drop the price dramatically to where we're losing money on these routes, but we'll do this for a few months, we'll knock the competition out of business, and then we'll go back and we'll raise the price to whatever we want because we won't have competition anymore. It's difficult to establish predatory pricing because it's very hard to prove that a particular merchant is doing it for that reason. The merchant could be doing it because they need to sell these particular products. Walmart, for example, needs to sell the hammers before introducing a new line of hammers, or because they think that the product is not going to sell anyway. In other words, just because they're selling it at a loss doesn't mean they're doing it for predatory pricing. Maybe they see the product isn't selling at all, and they just need to get rid of it from the shelves in order to put something else on the shelf. So sometimes you sell things at a loss just to get rid of it, just to get it off your shelves. So a seller could be cutting prices below cost with the intention of punishing a competitor, but they could also sell below cost, such as unloading excess inventory. So you got to be careful about making a determination about whether a price in fact is predatory. Chapter 10 is delivering customers value. That's important in terms of marketing because when you deliver customers value, you get a good reputation and customers come back. Marketing channels is independent organizations to help make a product or service available for consumption. How are you going to distribute your product? Are you going to sell your product through retail stores? Are you going to sell your product to other retail stores? Are you going to sell your product only on the internet? Are you going to sell your product at trade shows? How are you going to market your product? Obviously, your channel decisions affect other marketing decisions. If you're going to primarily sell online, well, then you want to advertise online. If you're going to primarily sell through your retail store, well, you might want to advertise in local newspapers. Channel members add value to the organization by allowing you to focus on manufacturing. A channel member might be a retail store that you sell to, or a wholesaler that you sell to who sells to retail stores. Using these intermediaries to go and help market and sell your product is helpful because it allows you to focus on the things that you do best, which is the manufacture of the product. Channels offer the firm more than it can achieve on its own through contacts with other people in the industry, experience, specialization, scale of operation. They may be able to sell more of the products than you can possibly sell while you manufacture them. And one idea that many companies try to do is they try to achieve a multi-channel distribution system. This is when the firm sets up 2 or more marketing channels to reach one consumer or one market with 1 or more segments of the market. John Deere, for example, sells garden tractors through John Deere retailers, Lowe's stores, online. JCPenney sells through retail stores and online. Just yesterday I was reading about how Walmart is starting a new pickup grocery store. In some places you can actually order your and I know other stores like A&P already does this essentially, but what you can do is you can go online to walmart.com and pick your local retailer, pick your local Walmart grocery, order your groceries online, tell them exactly what you want, and then they go and pick you say you want a pound of apples, they go and pick a pound of apples for you, put it in a bag, whatever, all the groceries you want, and then you tell them when you're coming. I'm coming at 6 o'clock in the afternoon on October 7th, and then you drive up to a little kiosk and you pay, I guess, or you pay online beforehand, and they come out to your car and deliver your bags of groceries. And it sounds like a pretty efficient way of doing it. I don't know, personally I like to shop for my own groceries in the store, but you know what, I guess that will change like everything else as the technology increases. It offers many advantages to the producer to be able to distribute your products through so many different ways. You can go into the store, you can do it online, you can do it by phone, you can sell it to retailers, sell it to wholesalers, whatever, and it's also known as a hybrid marketing channel system because hybrid means a mixture of different tactics. Selective distribution is the idea of only allowing some channels to market some of your products. You might offer a whole bunch of products, but one of them is only distributed by a particular store. I mean, if you're Staples, you might produce many different products, but you might say, or if you're, a company that manufactures office supplies, Triple M, let's say, and so you may market all sorts of different products, but maybe your line of Post-it notes can only be sold through a particular distributor, only be sold through Staples. You might make a deal with a distributor, with a retail store, to say, okay, in exchange for your selling all of our products, in exchange for your marketing our products, and maybe only having our products in your stores, we'll make an exclusivity with you that you're the only distributor that can sell this and this product. You can make deals. In other words, you can make 25 different products, and 24 of them might be available anywhere, online or in your own stores, wholesalers, retailers, whatever. But then one of them is exclusively marketed through Staples or exclusively marketed through Best Buy or whatever, because you made a deal with that company. They give you something of value, like featuring it in their stores, in exchange for you giving them something of value, which is an exclusivity. If you want this particular product, you have to go to Best Buy. If you want this particular product, you have to go to Staples, whatever. So by selectively distributing, companies can develop good working with relationships with the selected channel. and expect a better than average selling effort, or they may even require a particular selling effort from Best Buy or Staples to push your particular product. Selective distribution gives producers good market coverage with more control and less cost, because they only have to distribute to one retailer. Products that are selectively distributed include appliances, furniture, some types of clothing. In other words, some types of appliances you can only get in particular stores. I just Googled to find an example, and here's an example I just found for today. This is a headline from today that says 17 Magazine Fashion Collection. Honestly, I don't really know what 17 Magazine is, but I guess it's a magazine that has a fashion collection, whatever, and to launch exclusively at Sears. Whatever they're launching over here, I don't know, cool clothing, I don't know, some type of jackets and sweaters and whatnot. Whatever they're offering, the point is they're offering it and they're launching it only at Sears. Well, it says, actually, this couldn't really be today's article, or I just found it now, but it says the date is July 15th, and now it's October, so I guess that here's another example. Here is Selkie, 55-inch 4K TV, goes exclusively to Sears. So they're making whatever, and Selkie and Sears teamed up to introduce whatever it is. The point is, a manufacturer went to Sears, and there are many other stores that you could find examples for, and they made a deal with Sears. And it says, listen, we're going to give you this product, and you're the only people that can sell this. We're not going to turn around and sell this same product at Best Buy. We're not going to turn around sell this same product at Macy's. But in exchange, you've got to push it. And they probably have some kind of arrangement exactly what that means. Sears has to push it. Maybe Sears has to put it front and center in front of their other models. Maybe they have to have special colored signs that's in their TV department that says, "Here, go see, this is the great TV, and go buy Selkie's TVs." But whatever their ideas are, both sides benefit. Sears benefits in that they get to be the only store where you can buy this product, and Selkie benefits in that Sears gives them an extra little push in terms of their marketing. Obviously, everyone has to make a decision on their own whether it's worth it. Sears might make the decision that it's not worth it. We'd rather just market all of our other products equally. We don't need your exclusive. Or, I'm sorry, Psyche, not Selkie, whatever. Anyway, and the company might say, we don't want to just sell to Sears. We'd like to sell to Best Buy, too. It's not worth it. But that's one decision that companies have to make. Inventory management is the idea of making sure you have the right amount of inventory available to sell. Managers must create a balance between carrying too little of a product and too much. If you carry too much of a product, well, then you have too much inventory, your stock may become obsolete, you may not sell them. You stock 100 of these tablets and only 10 of them sell. Well, you've got 90 sitting on the shelves taking up space in your store. In the meantime, you've paid for the product already and it's not selling and you're losing money, and that's not good. If you have too little, on the other hand, then the consumer might come and you don't have it, then the consumer gets annoyed, consumer goes shop somewhere else, and the consumer gets the impression that you don't stock your products very well. Then you have the just-in-time logistics system. That's the idea where you order the products as you need them. With such systems, producers and retailers carry only small inventories of products or merchandise for a few days of operation, and then every few days you order new. And it requires very accurate forecasting and inventory. If I get word that I'm going to sell, I figure out that I'm going to sell about 100 of these products over the next week, well, I can stock 200 of them, but then I'm going to take up extra shelf space, and I might lose money by spending money that I don't need to spend right now. On the other hand, if I stock 105 of them, well, that's a little risky because I might run out. But if I have very good numbers and very good data from history that predicts exactly how many I'm going to sell, I may have the ability to manage my inventory very precisely. The next chapter is entitled Retailing and Wholesaling. Retailing, of course, is when you sell directly to the customer, whereas a wholesaler sells to the retailer. Retailing is all activities involved in selling goods directly to the final consumer for their personal, non-business use. I mean, technically speaking, you can buy something retail for your business use. If you have a business and you need a stapler and you go to Staples and buy a stapler, well, that's still retail. Retail means directly to the consumer, directly to the person who's the final end user of the product. Retailers are classified by the amount of service they offer, the breadth and depth of their product lines. You could have a store like Walmart, which has 8 zillion different products, or you could have a little store that sells sells just suits or just shirts or whatever. The relative prices charged. There are discount retailers, and there are more high-end retailers. And of course, how they are organized. There are some stores that are like department stores, or that are department stores, and have many different areas with many different types of goods. Types of retailers include the classification by the amount of service. You've got limited service retailers, people that don't really provide a lot of assistance, but they provide some level of assistance. They provide more sales assistance as they carry more goods, but basically they're not going to give you full service. I mean, really, the truth is the order of this is a little confusing. I'm going to change the order over here. The lowest level is the self-service retailers. The self-service retailers are customers who go ahead and buy their own and don't really get much help. A big box retailer like Walmart, again, I keep using that example, but that's an example of a self-service retailer. You go down the aisle, you pick what you want, you come, you pay for it, you check it out. You're not going to get much in the way of service. There are limited service retailers, maybe department stores that have salespeople, but pretty much you're on your own, though you can ask for help. Then there are full-service retailers that carry more specialty goods that customers are weighted on. High-end clothing stores, Saks Fifth Avenue, something like that. You walk in, a salesperson comes over to you. What do you need? What can I get you? Etc., etc. These are different types of retailers. Obviously, self-service retailers can charge a little bit less than full-service retailers because they have less to pay in terms of salespeople. Then you can also look at retailers based on what they sell. You can look at them in terms of specialty stores, department stores, or supermarkets. Specialty stores sell individual products. Radio Shack sells electronics. Clothing stores sell clothing, of course. There are department stores that have different departments for many different types of services. Clothing, home furnishing, household goods. Macy's, Sears, JCPenney, of course, are examples of department stores. And then there are supermarkets, which carry a large variety of low-cost, low-margin groceries. Grocery stores carry food usually, but also other little items, and they charge relatively low prices, and they make very little in terms of profit on each individual item, but they try to make it up in volume. They try to sell a tremendous number of groceries to people in order to make up for their relatively low margins. Then you have convenience stores, which have a small number of high turnover goods that people need, maybe not necessarily looking for sales. A 7-Eleven, a Circle K, something like that. These chains, you go in not because you're looking to save money necessarily, but because you need a particular item, and they have that particular item. It's not as complex as a supermarket. You walk in, you get, a Slurpee or whatever it is, or a bag of chips. You just walk in, walk out, relatively high turnover. These things go very quickly, and they try to make it up in terms of getting a lot of customers. Then you have superstores. Superstores are bigger than supermarkets, and they offer things that include food, but also include household items, items regarding cars, furnishings, clothing, all sorts of things. Walmart, Best Buy, well, Best Buy maybe not as good an example. I would say Target and Walmart are the two top examples that I could think of. Best Buy and, Barnes & Noble is a little bit more of a specialty store. I'm going to cross out Barnes & Noble here because Barnes & Noble is more specialty. But certainly Best Buy, Best Buy sells everything from electronics to appliances, television, even some furniture in some stores, etc. Category killers are really giant specialty stores that have a tremendous variety within a particular industry. I would say, Toys R Us, something like that. The huge bookstores. Barnes & Noble would be an example of that also. They just had, they're not necessarily big box retailers, but they are stores that have a very, very broad variety of goods in a particular field, and they're very highly competitive in that particular thing. party goods, sporting goods, models, something like that, pet stores, something to that effect. B&H, for those of you who live in New York, the electronic, they have like a huge showroom of all sorts of computers and electronics, and that's all they have. They don't have groceries, and they don't have furniture and things like that. Then you've got wholesalers. Wholesalers sell directly to the retailers. These includes all activities that sell to those buying for resale or business use. People buy them in order to turn around and resell them. Wholesalers add value for the producers by performing one or more channel functions. They channel it directly to the retailers. If I'm producing if I'm producing 10 million widgets in my factory, well, selling them directly to Best Buy and to Target and to Walmart is not so easy. Instead, I could sell it to a wholesaler, sell all of them to a wholesaler, and the wholesaler takes care of the channeling. The wholesaler takes care of reselling them directly to the retailers. Now it's a little bit more expensive because you have to sell it to the wholesaler at a lower price because they have to make their profit when they turn around and sell it to the retailer, but certainly it can help in terms of convenience. Merchant wholesalers own the things that they sell. And this is the largest group of wholesalers. Basically, if you are a wholesaler in breakfast cereal, for example, well, you go to Kellogg's, and Kellogg sells you 1 million, boxes of Cheerios, and then you turn around and sell 100,000 of them to ShopRite, and 100,000 of them to Pathmark, and 100,000 of them to A&P, and 100,000 of them to Kroger's, 100,000 of them to Albertsons, whatever. So you're selling directly to the retailers. That is a merchant wholesaler. But you actually own it. You actually own the 1 million boxes of cereal before you turn around and sell them. And if you don't sell them for whatever reason, then you got to eat them, literally and figuratively. Yuck, yuck. Okay, then you have agents or brokers. Agents or brokers serve as liaisons. They don't really take control. They don't take ownership of the goods. Instead, they just facilitate the selling directly to the retailers. And they specialize by product or by a customer type. They may, book agents that facilitate the sale from the publisher to, Barnes & Noble or something like that would be one example. Then you have shopping centers or shopping malls. And in the old days, shopping centers used to be in the center part of town. You'd have your department stores, you'd have your specialty stores, you'd have your movie theaters, your banks, whatever. But instead, and since people have moved out to the suburbs, you don't really have so much a town center as you used to. You don't have, downtown you still have in big cities, but you don't necessarily have that in suburbs. Instead, what they try to do is, you could spread it out among the population, or you could have big shopping malls that have just are unique areas which have huge numbers of stores. And developers built malls and provided underground parking, etc., to try to revive central shopping areas where people go when they need all sorts of goods. Public relations is, of course, a very important component of marketing. You don't want to market in a way that makes you look insensitive, or that makes you look stupid, or that makes you be unpopular for whatever reason. So marketers use different strategies, first of all, when it comes to children. That's a very important distinction between advertising to children and advertising towards adults. First of all, marketers can create special messages that are geared towards children and more appealing to them. They can use a personality symbol from which children can relate to. Maybe an athlete, maybe a cartoon character, maybe a superhero, something like that. And the marketer can relate to specific situations in which children usually find themselves in. For example, if you're talking about advertising a breakfast cereal, like Frosted Flakes, so it's just, I remember when I was a kid, we used to see those Frosted Flakes commercials where Tony the Tiger would be involved in some sort of a sporting event, like a baseball game, or something where children are more likely to be involved in than adults. And they'd show that how the breakfast cereal would help you win the sporting event or whatever, or ace the test or whatever it is that you establish a situation that children are likely to be in and are likely to identify with. Obviously, you're talking about products that are marketed towards children. And again, maybe sporting products, maybe breakfast cereals, candy, that sort of thing. A personality symbol is a character that represents the product which the consumer can relate. You may hire an athlete, hire an entertainer, somebody to endorse your product. That would be an example of a personality symbol. What are some of the things that you have to determine when you make an advertising decision? First of all, you want to maximize your reach. You want to maximize the percentage of people that are going to be exposed to an ad campaign during a period of time. Do you want to put it in the newspaper? Do you want to put it on the internet? Again, you have to look at your target market. Does a lot of your target market access the internet? Does a lot of your target market read the local newspaper? Which part of the internet? Are you going to advertise on Facebook, or advertise on Google, or advertise on a local news station? Are you going to advertise in the local newspaper? What percentage of your market actually reads that? Frequency. Number of times the person is exposed to the advertisement. Do you want to run it once and you figure the customer only needs to be exposed to it once in order to think it's a good idea? Or do you want to try to expose the customer to it 10 different times by running the ad over and over and over again? Obviously, that costs more money, but it also has a greater chance of impacting the customer. Media impact. What is your message that you're establishing over the advertised medium? How believable is the message, and how much will the customer be impacted? If you make your ad funny or clever, on the one hand, you may distract attention from the message, but on the other hand, you're a lot more likely to captivate the attention of the listener. Also, you want to look at timing. Marketers have to decide how to schedule their advertisements. If you're looking at something, for example, that's relevant to children, you may want to schedule it in the afternoon, if it's on radio or on TV, something like that. If you're talking about something that is focused on young adults, you may want to try to run in radio or TV advertisement in the evening, where they're most likely to be home from work. And if you're talking about elderly people, then maybe the middle of the day would be fine, because maybe a lot of them are retired. So, here's an example. During Hanukkah time over here, ads from numerous marketers are seen more frequently, like in Jewish newspapers, for example. That would be one example here. But in general, the idea is you want to focus it on a time, and a time of year, or a time of day, or really any. If it's just a seasonal type thing. If you're talking about vacation spots, you might want to advertise it in the summer when the kids are off from school and people can go, or in the spring when people are planning their summer vacation. Advertising a summer getaway spot in the middle of December might not, people might forget about it by the time they're planning their summer vacations. And of course, there are changing paradigms in communication. Some marketers predict a marketing chaos scenario where old traditional mass media model, things like newspaper advertisements and maybe even television advertisements, and we see, you see that they're kind of falling apart to the point where the new methods by which you get your word out are on the internet and through apps, through sponsoring websites, through sponsoring videos. That's the sort of shift that you see towards in terms of advertising. And other experts believe there'll be a more gradual shift. Generally, I think you still see both. You still see a lot of newspaper and television advertisements, but certainly there's a lot more in terms of if you want to advertise your product, going on Facebook, going on Google, and advertising it that way certainly is becoming a preferred medium for many types of businesses. Chapter 13 is about personal selling and sales promotion. Personal selling is a different type of marketing. Personal selling is when you go to the buyer individually and try to sell them on your product. Obviously, normally you just have a store and the customer comes in, or you advertise on the radio or on internet or whatever it is, and the customer, newspapers, customer comes in. But also, if you're trying to sell to a large enough customer, you're trying to sell to a retail store, you're trying to sell to a wholesaler, or even a buyer who has a really big order, you may want to designate someone to go personally meet them, personally call them, personally communicate with them. And that is really a sales force. Now, to manage a sales force, obviously the first thing you got to do is you figure out whether you want to have a sales force, and how big a sales force is. Sales force can be just a few people. A sales force can be tens of thousands of people for a company that does millions and millions of dollars worth of business, or even billions of dollars worth of business every year. Increasing the sales force size will, of course, increase costs because you have to pay salaries and you have to pay the logistics for the individual salespeople. But of course, it will also increase sales because now you have individuals going out and making sales in person rather than just making sales through advertising. Obviously, sales by person should be more effective. And a workload approach can be useful in determining how big a sales force you need. What are the major accounts that you need to deal with? If you have huge accounts, it may be smart to establish a salesperson to deal with accounts of that size, and determining the number of people to call on each of the account the desired number of times. Do you need to call every major account once a week? Do you need to call them twice a week? Do you need to call them once a month? Do you need to email them once in a while? Making a determination of how many accounts you have, how much contact each one needs, how much time that takes, will give you an idea of how many people you need to make these sales. So the first thing is you need to train, or the second thing, after determining what kind of a sales force you want, the second thing is you need to train your sales force. To train your sales force can be done one time, and it can be done repeatedly. You can constantly establish new training programs. Advantage of a training sales program is, of course, it helps make more salespeople knowledgeable and motivated in terms of the needs of their customers. It gives them a leg up on techniques for selling the product effectively. It gives them information about the company's objectives and the strategies that are relevant. Giving the salespeople training gives them information about your company, information about skills and techniques that are going to be necessary to help them do their sales job, and it gives them time, or it gives them expertise in finding out what they need to find out about their customer. Obviously, the disadvantage of training in general is that it consumes a lot of time, and therefore it is very expensive. It's expensive because you have to pay the salaries of the people that are getting trained at the time that they're getting trained, and also you have to pay the salaries of the trainers, whoever actually does the training. Managing a sales force is the third step. You've got a sales force, you have it the correct size, they're trained, well, now you got to manage them. You want to encourage the salespeople to work hard. How do you get the salespeople to work hard? You've got a fleet of 25 salespeople who are supposed to go out and sell your widgets to retailers around the country. Well, they've got to go and they have to find the correct numbers, they have to call them, leave messages, email follow-up, maybe visit them sometimes, fly out there, arrange meetings. Not so easy to be a salesperson. Sometimes you have to cold call people who are not interested in your message, and you have to make them interested in your message. Maybe you have to go to conferences where where consumers come in order to look for services like this. Maybe if you sell tech products or tablets or whatever it is, maybe you can go to a tech conference where people are there looking for technological products, and you can set up a booth, which is also, of course, expensive. These companies and these conferences charge a lot of money for you to set up a booth there, and setting up the booth itself and paying the salaries of the people that are going to man the booth are fairly expensive. But how can you motivate your sales force to do what is necessary? Number one, you can have a good organizational climate. If the morale of the company is high and people want to do their best because the employees like the company, salespeople are more likely to be effective. Sales quotas. You can give people a requirement that they sell a certain amount or they're fired. That certainly may not always be realistic, may not always be doable, but certainly that is a good incentive. People want to keep their jobs. Positive incentives. You give them a commission. You give them money. If they sell, they give them a certain percentage of what they sell. This is very, very common with regard to salespeople. Sales meetings, where you can get people together and discuss what the best strategies are. People can try to help each other sell. And sales contests. Whoever sells the most widgets in a given month gets a trip to Hawaii, or whatever it is. The organizational climate is, of course, very, very important. It's one of those 5 factors, but we're going to discuss that in a little bit more detail. And this is an important part of building a successful sales staff, because how they feel about their opportunities, value, and rewards of doing well is an important component of their morale. And the better they feel about the company and the better they feel about how they're treated, the better they're probably going to do. When they're treated as special contributors and have great opportunities for income and to make more money to get promoted, their sales performance, generally speaking, will be higher. And finally, a note about email advertisements. Obviously, one way in which to get your message out is to send emails to everyone. You can just send emails to millions of email addresses that you harvest from some list. That sometimes they refer to that as spam, where you just send out blind emails to everybody, and hope that a few of them will actually look at it. You figure if you send it out to a million different people, which is not that difficult with these lists in today's day and age, even if 999,900 of them ignore you, you could still be doing okay. Now, in order to be successful at all, emails are probably going to have something more than just say, we've got a great product, come to us, because people get zillions and zillions of emails. A lot of them get picked off by spam blockers, which is true that you have to figure out a way. If you're going to advertise by email, you have to figure out a way to get around spam blockers. But that's another issue that, honestly, I really couldn't help you with. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this course, but that's really a technical issue. But email advertisements that are successful, to the extent they are successful, obviously you want them to be targeted. You don't want them just be to everybody in the world. Maybe you want them targeted towards people who have solicited information from your company in the past. But also email advertisements that use animation, interactive links, streaming videos, personalized messages can help capture the attention of the people reading the email. And they can also become an effective advertising, but again, you do have to distinguish yourself from general spam. People that get more and more email tend to resent promotional clutter and spam that come in, but maybe if you can send targeted emails with really good content to people who have previously indicated an interest in your company, that can help be an effective advertising medium as well. The next section is going to really continue on the same theme as the previous chapter. The previous chapter was about individual salespeople. Now we're looking at building direct customer relationships, building one-on-one relationships between the company and the customer. Direct marketing, of course, means connecting directly with carefully targeted individuals to both obtain immediate response and to cultivate lasting customer relationships. We're not talking about advertising to the general market. We're talking about dealing with a customer individually, somebody who is likely to be a customer because they've responded positively in the past, because they've solicited information from you, because maybe they're a past customer of you. You want to try to build a personal relationship or a direct relationship between your company and salespeople, and the salespeople that you have dealt with, that you're dealing with, and the customers that you think will be good customers. Advantage of direct marketing include it's a powerful tool for building customer relationships. Obviously, it's more personal, more likely to get people to pay attention to what you're saying than general advertising. It offers a low-cost, speedy way to reach markets. You can build relationships with the individuals rather than purchasing costly advertisements. It offers lower costs, improved efficiencies in handling inventory and distribution. When you know specifically with whom you're dealing, when you have a personal relationship and your salesperson can call the customer and say, when do you want it? How do you want it? It's a lot more efficient than just dealing with things that are faceless order systems. Again, it's not that they don't cost money. They do cost money. Salespeople, of course, cost money because you got to pay their salaries, but it also can be worth it because of some of these other costs that it saves. It offers speedier handling of channels and logistics. You have individuals that you can deal with, individuals that your customer can deal with, rather than just going through the normal process. Greater flexibility gives access to customers who couldn't be reached through other channels, since they can deal directly with you who are providing the service. And click-only companies, like .coms, people that only operate online, can save money on retail space. Doesn't even have to be. It could also be a services company that fixes your website but only operates in cyberspace, doesn't have a storefront. You can have salespeople deal directly with the customers without having to go through an actual store. Some companies use direct marketing as their only or primary approach. Amazon, eBay, Geico, Dell. These companies don't run radio advertisements. Television, well, actually Dell does, I think. But Amazon, eBay, maybe they run some TV advertisements, but certainly their primary method of advertising is direct. They deal with the customer directly, the person they're looking for directly. Amazon.com, you want to buy something, you go to Amazon.com directly and you order it directly from Amazon.com. You don't order something that Amazon sold to a store. I mean, stores can also buy from Amazon, but primarily when you want something from Amazon, you go directly to Amazon. You don't go to a third party. Geico also, many insurance companies deal primarily through insurance agents. Geico, generally speaking, if you want to use Geico, they encourage you to go directly to geico.com and use them that way. Same thing with eBay and many other. Hewlett Packard, Dell, you go straight to these companies' websites, fill out your orders, and get it that way. Catalogs are another way in which to market. Not quite direct, since catalogs are designed to be given to a large number of people. But you design a catalog so that you can give to potential customers so that they can get their information and then later contact you with what they are interested in. Direct marketing through print, video, or digital catalogs that are mailed to specific customers, maybe a customer who has filled out an online contact request or was a customer of yours in the past. And it can be made available in stores. The catalogs can, very often you see that, you go into a store and you see a circular, you see something with advertising their products, or they could be online, which is also very efficient. Catalog marketing trends, and one of the trends is, probably the single most important trend regarding catalogs, is that they're going digital. It doesn't cost anything to produce. I mean, it costs to produce, but it doesn't cost anything to distribute. To distribute a physical catalog, you have to mail it, you have to pay printing costs, shipping costs. It may cost a lot of money to print, especially if it's color and it's glossy. On the other hand, to send somebody an online catalog costs nothing. You just email them the link to the online catalog. And it allows real-time merchandising. You can send links directly to people as soon as they tell you that they're interested. You can literally just shoot them an email right away, or you can have the email directly from your website, which makes it even easier. Print catalogs, however, are still the primary medium for catalogs. Many companies, I shouldn't say most, but certainly many companies still use print catalogs. There's still the Sears catalog, which in the old days used to be the synonymous with the one of the best catalogs. They still have it, although again today you can get it online as well. Printed catalogs are more effective at creating an emotional connection and can be used to lead customers to online catalogs. If you're sitting around flipping around if on the couch, you may take out a print catalog and flip it around, whereas flipping around a virtual catalog, not quite as easy. Other things in terms of direct advertising include blogs. A blog is short for a weblog, which is a daily journal of entries where you post about pretty much anything. And you can discuss anything you like, but you can use it to hawk your product. If people read your blog because you have politics in it or sports or whatever it is that people like, you can also say, oh, by the way, I've got this, this product that I'm selling. And you can reach people that way. Obviously, you want to keep your content interesting. You don't want to make your product into your blog into one big advertisement, because then people aren't going to come as much. But the point is that you can use a blog, especially if it's interesting, to reach people. Sometimes if you're a company that's a media company, you give them news stories and you give them news analysis so that they should come. And while they're there, you figure out a way to get them some advertising. So many topics are discussed in blogs: baseball, politics, money, pretty much everything. And there could be narrower topics, news, there could be family news. You could have a blog just for your particular family, where other people may not be interested in, but and in these blogs, you can advertise products. There's also, of course, online advertising, which you're marketing through search engines or you're marketing through Facebook or whatever it is, because consumers are spending more and more time on the internet, and media ads are effective in engaging viewers. Sometimes you have to, in order to load a page or watch a video on YouTube, you have to watch a short video commercial of something else, and as long as these commercials captivate your viewers' attention, they can be very effective. And there are many ways to advertise online and reach many consumers than ever before. You can, like I mentioned before, you can pay Facebook to promote a post about your product. You can pay Google to list your link higher in the sponsored links. There are all sorts of different ways to get the word out about your product online without ever going to a newspaper or radio or television, anything like that. as we head toward the end of the course, now we look at things that are a little bit more broad in perspective. And to this chapter, we're going to look at the global marketplace. We're going to be looking at different ideas regarding marketing, not so much on the individual level, which is what we focused on, but on the global level. That's why it's called the global marketplace. And in order to understand the global marketplace, we need to look at economic communities. Economic communities are a group of nations organized to work towards a common goal in the regulation of international trade. Economic communities can be worldwide, it can be geography-based, for example, NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, or the European Union. Those are geography-based economic communities. There are also economic communities that are based on similarity. For example, OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, is countries throughout the world, countries in the Middle East, countries in South America, Central America, countries in other places that happen to have oil resources. So economic communities are formed because they benefit member nations by reducing the barriers of free flow of services. Even within the United States, you can call the United States itself an economic community, since obviously things can be imported and exported back and forth between states, and the EU and the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, that's CAFTA, can also be considered economic communities. You make free trade rules apply for countries throughout each other's. In other words, to allow countries to import goods into each other, like NAFTA for the United States, allowing relatively free trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Okay, now, so marketing strategies obviously also have to take into account this global structure. We can look at the marketing strategies as being the quote-unquote Americanized world cultures. Very often, American brands have power, have good reputations even in other countries. Multinational companies are criticized sometimes because they feel they're just globalizing their brands. Like Americanizing they're not just globalizing their brands, they're globalizing American culture. For example, Starbucks in China, people in Saudi Arabia watching American films. Again, this is not a criticism from an economic perspective. This is a criticism really from a social perspective, where countries like Saudi Arabia might not want American films to dominate their culture, and it's something that countries deal with. But from an economic perspective, it's very important because it gives, exporting American culture to these other countries certainly gives American companies like Starbucks and McDonald's, things like that, the ability to export goods and services to these countries. Teens in India watching NTV, McDonald's. There are 80 McDonald's in Beijing, just one in one Chinese city. And critics, some people worry, or at least mostly in those countries, Americans don't worry about it too much, but people in those countries worry that perhaps Americanizing these countries, or Americanizing these cultures, may be hurting the cultures of these countries. So people in diverse countries and cultures throughout the world use American products and services, and so therefore American services have to adapt to the local cultural values and traditions. There was an article in the New York Times that we work in our English class about Disney World using Feng Shui for their Disney World in Hong Kong. So again, that's just one example of using cultural norms in other places to try to adopt your products to those countries. And of course, the first thing you need to do when you decide to go into a market is a market entry strategy. How do you go ahead and get your products into that country? You can export your products directly to that country. You may have to deal with tariffs or taxes that are levied by that country, but you can export. It also may cost a lot in terms of shipping. You can joint venture. You can team up with a company in that country to market your products, so you don't necessarily have to import them directly, but you can team up with a company already in that country to give them the opportunity to market your products there, to sell your products there. Or you can invest in products or manufacturing processes in that country. You can invest in the manufacturing of goods in that country. Here are some types of joint venturing. Joint venturing, again, establishing business relationships with companies in that other country. You can license, which you enter into an agreement that allows you to market products that you own in that other country or together with that other company. There's contract manufacturing, in which you have a product that you produce and you go out and hire some other country's factory to produce your product. Let's say Toyota wants to import cars to the United States, and so what it does is it builds a plant in Kentucky or whatever, and hires American workers to build it. Hires American managers to go ahead and build Toyotas and sell there. There's management contracting, in which the domestic firm supplies the management know-how to the foreign company. You go and I think there was a deal once between Mitsubishi and Chrysler, or Mitsubishi and Dodge, where cars would be under the exact same specs of Mitsubishi, but they would be marketed in the United States as Dodges. And then there's joint ownership, where a company joins investors in a foreign market to create a local business in which the firm shares joint ownership and control. Again, another car example, Daimler and Chrysler, where Chrysler and Daimler, who was the makers of Mercedes, actually merged and became one company, and they used their joint marketing practices in both countries. Here are some examples of licensing. British-owned Cadbury licenses Hershey to manufacture its chocolates, Cadbury chocolates, which are then manufactured and sold by Hershey in the United States. Contract manufacturing, an example would be Sears opening up department stores in other countries like Mexico and Spain. Management contracting, Hilton signing an agreement where its new luxury hotel in Thailand will be managed by a Thailand company, the CPN Pattaya Beach Company, that's well acquainted with Thai tourists and Thai culture and how to go about marketing a hotel in Thailand. And Hilton has an international reputation, and so that's what they bring to the table. Hilton brings their reputation to the table, where people from Europe or the United States coming into Thailand, they would be more comfortable staying at a Hilton. And on the other hand, the Thai company brings expertise to that. It brings the expertise to satisfy the Thai market. And then joint ownership, where Hershey created a joint venture with Godrej Beverages in India to allow them to distribute chocolate in India, and they need help from the local company to sell to locals in India. Now, setting prices is, of course, a lot different when you're talking about setting them in the United States and setting them in other countries. Companies have to adapt prices according to global markets. Some people in the United States maybe could afford higher prices than perhaps people in China or India, and therefore the prices have to be a lot less. One price would be too low in one country, while the same price would be too high in poorer countries. And also prices need to reflect costs of tariffs, which are taxes on imports assessed by certain countries, wholesale margins, retail margins, importing costs, shipping costs, all things that are relevant specifically to marketing in other countries. Our final chapter is on marketing ethics and social responsibility. It's one thing to get the consumers to like your product and to know about your product and to buy your product. It's another thing to do it completely responsibly and ethically. Some of the issues, obviously, that you're going to be dealing with, mainly your job is to try to get your company money. But aside from that, there are certain things that can help your company, not only by helping society in general, but also helping your company's reputation. If you're socially responsible and ethical and you get that sort of reputation, that certainly helps the company. And conversely, getting a reputation as an unethical company is not good in the long term for a company. So some criticisms of marketing that you need to watch out for include high prices, which there's a high cost of distribution, advertising, big markups by companies trying to make big products can cause high prices. You don't want to get the reputation as the kind of company that tries to soak your consumers. Deceptive practices, lying to consumers or fooling consumers, or high pressure selling. Car dealerships are particularly notorious for that sort of thing, trying to force people or psychologically pressure people too hard to purchase products. And poor service to disadvantaged customers who may need your services for a grocery store, a gas station, something like that, where people just really need your services, to mark up prices or to give them poor customer service because you can take advantage of them, is obviously a big negative for a company. There's also some other possible negative ethical practices, including selling shoddy, harmful, or unsafe products. If you sell products that are unsafe, customers may not know about it right away. As soon as they take it out of the store, they might think it's a good product, and they might be happy to pay the price that you're asking. But of course, that can cause long-term problems for the company, including liability lawsuits if the product causes an injury. Loss of customers when you get a reputation, loss of customers who get taken advantage of by these bad products. A damaged reputation, common sense, you get a reputation for selling shoddy products, people aren't going to come to you. And conflict with consumer groups and regulators, government regulators and other consumer advocacy groups, which tend to speak out against companies that do this. There's also a negative ethical or an ethically questionable activity called planned obsolescence, which is when you cause a product to become obsolete before a real replacement is needed. Now this, I can tell you, being an academic, I can tell you this is done a lot when it comes to textbooks. There's a 2013 edition of algebra, and then the next year they come out with a 2014 edition of algebra. Now algebra probably hasn't changed a tremendous amount between 2013 and 2014, but the companies know that people who take these courses have to buy the textbook, and they have to buy the latest edition of the textbook because that's what colleges are going to require, and the reason why colleges are going to require it is because their accrediting agencies require them to do it. So, putting out textbooks every year, even when it's totally unnecessary, for the purpose of making the old products obsolete. If you don't make them obsolete, if you only print one every 10 years, well then people are going to start selling them on the secondary market. Instead of paying you $150 for the textbook, they're going to pay somebody else who's selling it used $50. And they're going to undersell you. So the way to counteract that, what some textbook publishers companies do, is they keep putting out new editions all the time to make the secondary market much more difficult to be useful. That's an example of planned obsolescence. It can be done in other industries as well, and of course it is ethically questionable to do that if there's no real need for the new edition. Marketing also has an impact on society. Creating false wants. Do commercials ever convince you that you absolutely, positively need the latest gizmo when the old gizmo that you're using now is perfectly good? This newest tablet has faster and more memory and more this and more pizzazz, even though the one that you have already is perfectly good. And if you didn't see the new commercial for the iPhone 6 or 7 or whatever it is by now, and you probably just wouldn't care that much, but because you see it, you want it. Now again, it's nothing illegal about creating a want in society for the product that you're selling, but it's the sort of thing that could cause some ethical issues. Encouraging too much materialism is another thing that companies do, and that's a question as to whether it's ethical to do that in a way that the society doesn't really need. Again, it's the sort of thing, there's nothing illegal about promoting materialism and commercialism, but it's something that people sometimes bring up when it comes to the ethics of marketing. And of course, there are many causes for materialism. There's marketing, but there's also other things, cultural background, family, even religion, education, peer groups. Other people have stuff, you want the same stuff. Societal marketing, which is the idea of sustainable marketing or socially responsible marketing, is marketing that tries to preserve the needs of your consumers and your own needs while also trying to make sure that society is helped to the maximum extent possible. Societal marketing is really a principle of sustainable marketing, and it believes the idea of it may not make as much money for the company in the short run, but the idea of it is to try to make sure the idea of it, is to try to make sure that you do it in a way that helps the society and even the company in the long run. Company markets in a way that promotes itself as being socially responsible, gets a better reputation in the long run. It considers consumers' wants and interests, the company's requirement, but also the customer's long-run interest and society's long-run interest. Trying to market cars that use very little gasoline, or electric cars, things like that. Things that promote more recycling, or people sell folders or paper that are made from post-consumer waste, which is recycled materials. That may help get the company's reputation in a positive light as well. Sustainability Vision is a guide that shows how the company's products or services can change and evolve to new technologies. Forward-looking firms use this vision as a guide and to try to create a framework for pollution control and new environmental friendly technology. There are many examples. Companies that use recycled goods, companies that try to maybe make a product that rather than having to replace the whole product, you can update it so that it's a lot cheaper and causes a lot less waste, etc. These are some of the things that that help with sustainability in general. And here are some product types. Now the first one is something you don't want to do. That's a deficient product. They have products that neither immediate appeal nor long-run benefits. Those are the sorts of things you don't want to have to market because they're probably not going to be able to market very well in the long term. Then there are pleasing products which give high immediate satisfaction but hurt consumers in the long run. Junk food, cigarettes, things like that. Gambling probably is another example. That's that sort of thing. There are salutary products, which are companies with products with low immediate appeal but benefit customers in the long run. Bicycle helmets, insurance. You don't go to the store and says, "Oh wow, I can't wait to buy an insurance policy." But you know what? It could help your family and can help yourself in the long run if it's purchased correctly. And then there are desirable products, which have both. Give both high immediate satisfaction and long run benefits, like tasty, nutritious breakfast food. Not sure if such a thing exists, but that's an example. And that is all that we have for the slides. That's all for the crash course. I hope you have found it useful. If you have any questions, please contact us, and thank you very much for listening.